We are live on TikTok doing another live best ball draft on this stream. And we actually have 5 spots left in the draft I'm going to be starting out with on tonight's stream. I'm going to be doing a Best Ball Mania $25 draft after we do a private draft with members of our Discord. To join that, check the link in the YouTube live. It's fantasy season, guys. It is officially fantasy football season. It's been fantasy football season for me basically since May, but it's the real deal now. We are basically 3 weeks out from the season. I think tomorrow we are 3 weeks away from the first game of the NFL season. We are in fantasy football draft season. I've already done 2 fantasy football drafts, 1 high stakes draft. I've already completed a lot of drafts coming up in the coming weeks. It is final practice mode for your fantasy football draft. If you want to join the draft I'm about to do live on this stream, come to the YouTube live. Link is in the TikTok bio. Click on that Discord link. The link to the draft is in the Discord, as will be all future links to all future drafts that I'm doing on these live streams. So definitely join that Discord. Again, link is in the YouTube live. And on TikTok, I have a screenshot behind me of the top 6 players that I'm trying to draft in fantasy. So as we're waiting for people to join, 5 more spots again left in this Discord draft. I will ping this in Discord again. It's in the Best Ball channel for everyone just joining the Discord now. Again, link to join the Discord is in the YouTube live. Link to the YouTube is in the TikTok bio. I want Christian McCaffrey, man. If I'm on the clock within the top 5 picks, I'm taking Christian McCaffrey. I'm not drafting scared. I know what the ceiling is for Christian McCaffrey, and that far outweighs whatever risk you want to throw at me. Whatever risk that has Christian McCaffrey involved, the reward outweighs the risk. And that's what each pick is in fantasy football. It is a risk-reward scenario. And that's exactly why I use the WalterPicks app when doing my drafts, because you can see the ceiling and floor. And the ceiling for Christian McCaffrey is not just number 1 overall running back. It is league winner running back overall 1 in fantasy. We saw it just 2 years ago, and by all reports, he's fully healthy. I'm about to do a draft live on this stream, guys. To join, you can join. There's actually 5 spots left in this draft. It's a $3 best ball draft, only with members of our Discord. Anyone can join our Discord for completely free. All you got to do is go to the link in the YouTube description. If you're watching live on TikTok, the YouTube is really just 2 presses away of your finger. It's right in the link, right in the TikTok bio. Would you rather have T. Higgins or Michael Pittman? I would lean Michael Pittman just by a tiny bit, but I like both a lot. They're both going really close together in drafts. I'll take Cook all day. Yeah, so these are the guys I really want. Round 2, I think Javonte Williams has a really good case to be this year's Jonathan Taylor. I think there's a lot of risk with him as well. If he gets the type of workload he saw last season, I mean, he's busting at round 2 ADP. But I think if he goes from a 50% to 70% workload in that backfield, he could be this year's Jonathan Taylor. That's how efficient I think Javonte Williams is. And I'm also very just bullish overall on the entire Broncos offense, adding Russ in place of Drew Lock. I think we're going to see one of the most big leaps in efficiency from an offense from the Denver Broncos, who are going from a bottom 3 quarterback in the NFL to a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. There's going to be an absolute massive leap from Russ and the Denver Broncos this season. Again, we have 5 people left in this draft. There's only 5 spots left. And to join, it's $3. And you just got to find the link in our Discord. Let me ping that in Discord right now. I just sent that in Discord for anyone that's there. It's in the Best Ball channel. Again, you can join our Discord for completely free in the link. The link is in the YouTube description. Is anyone else's quality equally blurry? Oh, is it blurry? Only 480p. That's not good. Let me see if that's a Wi-Fi thing. Doesn't look like a Wi-Fi thing. What can I get for Tyreek in a dynasty league? You could get a lot for Tyreek in a dynasty league. No wide receivers. Yeah, there's no wide receivers in here. I mean, Juju's round 5. He's a wide receiver. And the reason I'm taking Kyle Pitts in round 3, by the way, he's basically a wide receiver. You're basically getting to play a wide receiver in your tight end slot if you're playing Kyle Pitts. Again, I'm doing a live draft right now on YouTube, and you can join this draft for $3, a $3 best ball draft, by checking out the link to the Discord, which is in the YouTube description. There's only 5 spots left. Only 5 spots left. Waiting till round 9 to take a tight end. Yeah, I don't hate that strategy. I don't hate that strategy at all. I'm not afraid, though, to reach for Travis Kelsey at the end of round 1, to reach for Mark Andrews in the middle to end of round 2, and to reach for Kyle Pitts in the beginning to middle round 3 in a 12-person PPR league. I'm not afraid to do that. If I miss on those guys, I'm hoping for Dalton Schultz in like round 5 or 6. And if I miss on Dalton Schultz, I'm not going to reach too high for any of those guys. And I'm just going to punt the position completely. Every single season-long draft I've done so far, every mock draft and my 1 high-stakes league that I've done, Evan Ingram goes undrafted. He's literally going undrafted. So if you're in a 12-person league, Evan Ingram's going undrafted. I would just wait and take him in literally the last round. And I think he could be like a fringe tight end 2 this season. In your TikTok from yesterday, asked who you'd rather take rather than Mixon. Can you talk about that? Take it at 12 rather than Mixon. Can you talk about that a little bit? Yeah, I think I had Mixon right at the end of round round 1 in the TikTok I posted yesterday. I just posted how I think the first 2 rounds should go. And I think there's a lot of debate to happen with how that should go in the first 2 rounds. There's a lot of good players in the first 2 rounds. But Joe Mixon is one of the safer bets in round 1. Again, if you want to join this draft I'm about to do after I finish my Joe Mixon take, you can join. There's only 5 spots left. It's only $3 entry fee. It is on Underdog Fantasy, the best platform to be drafting on right now. You can find the link to the draft in our Discord. You can find the link to the Discord in the YouTube Live. You can find the link to the YouTube Live in the TikTok bio. There's a few steps there, but I promise it's actually not that bad. And in Discord, you'll also find out whenever I'm doing these in the future and whenever I'm going live earlier in the future. But yeah, Joe Mixon's one of the safer guys because he has locked in first 2 downs on the Bengals offense. He has the red zone role as well, the goal line role, on what I think is going to be top 5 offense in the league this year. And you look at the one glaring weakness for the Bengals last year, it was the offensive line. The offensive line was absolute trash. It's amazing that they made the Super Bowl with such a poor offensive line in place. And what did they do this offseason? Only 4 spots left in the draft. I'm literally about to do, by the way. Again, you can find the link in Discord. I literally just sent it in there in the Best Ball channel. Find the link to the Discord. Hit the YouTube description. Only 4 spots left. It'll start immediately when we fill. It's only $3 to enter. What they do this offseason, they go out and they add good offensive linemen to replace their 3 worst offensive linemen with 3 at least average offensive linemen. I think that's an extremely good thing to happen for Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon has a legitimate path to 20 plus TDs this season. There's very few running backs who can say that about. The one downside to Joe Mixon is it doesn't seem like they're committed to giving him the 3-down role. He's not going to be out there for every 3rd down. He's not going to be out there for every pass catching situation. That does limit his ceiling, I think, a little bit in PPR leagues. I think it lowers his ceiling in comparison to some of these other good pass catchers going around him, like DeAndre Swift, like Saquon Barclay. But the safety for Joe Mixon is there. The safety's there, and that's why I'm fine taking him at the end of round 1, because at some point you got to factor in how safe a player is as well. A.J. Dillon's a sleeper. Yeah, he's a massive sleeper. In round 6, I'm not hesitating to pull the trigger. A.J. Dillon was snagged 1 pick before me in my my first high stakes draft, and I ended up reaching for Tony Pollard instead, but I would much prefer A.J. Dillon over Tony Pollard. I think Tony Pollard's like a slightly worse version of A.J. Dillon because A.J. Dillon's getting at least 50% of the carries. There's still a chance that Zeke just gets so much of that backfield that Tony Pollard just isn't able to produce what I'm hoping he can. But I also think Tony Pollard's a little bit of an exception because of how talented he is as a backup. He can be really involved as a receiver, even with Zeke on the field for a bulk of the snaps. Again, we're about to do a live draft on this stream, and I'm going to be showing the draft board live on the YouTube Live. There's only 3 spots left to join, and you can join. All you got to do, go to the YouTube Live, look in the description of the YouTube Live, click on the Discord link. In Discord, go to the Best Ball channel. You'll find a link to the draft right there. All that's completely free. To join the draft, though, it is $3. This is not a mock draft. This is a real draft. We have done some mock drafts on these lives, but this is a real draft. And to be honest, real drafts, they are the best way to prepare for your real fantasy drafts because there's real money on the line. It's only $3. But that's all it takes, man, to be taking a draft seriously. Way too many links. Yeah, there's a lot of links. You don't have to join. But in Discord, once you're in Discord, you also know all future drafts we're going to do, and you'll be able to talk to all 32 of our creators right in that Discord. So there's other reasons to join the Discord as well. We'll also be voting on the last place punishment for the 32-person league in Discord in just a couple of days. So looking forward to determining that. Right now, I think the options we have for the last place punishment, let me pull them up. The last place punishment options we have to vote on right now for the 32-person creator league right now is 1, same thing as last year, which is 24 hours in a Waffle House, minus 1 hour for every waffle you eat. The second option is to count from 1 to 32,000 on a TikTok live stream. I think this one's absolutely hilarious. I think this one's going to get my vote. People are going to underrate how absolutely terrible it's going to be to go on live and count from 1 to 32,000 on TikTok live. Again, we're going to be voting on these last place punishments in the Discord in just a couple of days. So you can join the Discord by going to the YouTube description. The third punishment we'll be voting on to taking the SAT until you score at least a score of 1,000, which is about the 40th percentile of SAT score. So not like super easy, but it should be doable. I think with some studying, you should be able to get past 1,000 on the SATs. And then the last place punishment we'll be considering is doing a lemonade stand until you reach at least $1,000 in sales. So all these last place punishments are going to be brutal. Again, we're going to be voting on those though in Discord. You can join the Discord completely free. And the link to that is in the YouTube description. You also can join this draft that I'm literally about to start with 12 of us live on this stream. There's only 3 spots left. They've been filling up literally instantly since we started this stream. There's only 3 spots left. This is a $3 best ball draft over an Underdog, and you can find the link on Discord in the best ball channel. Link is on Discord in the best ball channel. I got 6 players behind me that I really want to be drafting in fantasy as we wait for people to join this live draft. Again, only 3 spots left. If you want to join, you should join now because it's going to fill probably in the next few minutes. I want Christian McCaffrey in round 1 because I don't draft scared. I'm not going to draft scared. You shouldn't draft scared. Christian McCaffrey has the highest league winning upside of everyone. If you do want to draft scared, and I can't understand drafting scared. In past years, I have drafted for floor and not ceiling in the first round. And if you're going to do that, you should be going with Justin Jefferson or you should be going with Cooper Kupp because they are the safest 2 players at the safest position in fantasy football. But that's not how I draft. I draft to win my league. And with literally each one of my picks, that's what Christian McCaffrey can do. We saw it 2 years ago. He scores points differently than every other running back. Running back is the hardest position to nail in fantasy. So while Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, they're the safest guys, and you can make a pretty good argument, honestly, for both those guys to go any picks in the top 4. I want Christian McCaffrey because getting an elite running back, the level of Christian McCaffrey outweighs getting an elite wide receiver. There's only 2 spots left in the draft, by the way. Again, to join, go to the Discord link in the YouTube description and go to the Best Ball channel. Jerry Jeudy or Sutton? Jeudy reminds me of Doug Baldwin. Absolutely love that comparison. And I honestly think the right answer is both. I think you should be taking shots on both Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton because I don't think anyone can confidently say which one is going to be the guy that breaks out. Recently, there's been reports that Sutton's been the guy a little bit in camp. I'm in on Courtland Sutton, but I'm also in on Jerry Jeudy. And I talked it over with my family. We went into deep discussion, and I'm in the Jerry Jeudy camp. I'm firmly in Jerry Jeudy, just slightly ahead of Courtland Sutton. I think Jerry Jeudy's just bottom line. He's the better separator. I think he can create more yards than Courtland Sutton can. But at the same time, I'm not going to be surprised if it ends up being Sutton and if Sutton ends up scoring more touchdowns. But I want both of them. And I actually did draft both of them in my first high stakes draft. I took Jeudy in round 4, I think, and Sutton in round 5, or maybe round 5 and round 6. We are about to fill this draft. 12 people in. Love to see that. We are going to be broadcasting this draft live on YouTube. I got the second pick. So you guys know, if you're watching live on TikTok, who I'm going for in this draft. Though, unfortunately, I think everyone in this draft knows who I'm going for. So we'll see who ends up sliding to me. And our Falcons creator got the first pick in this draft. Again, you can see the draft board live on YouTube. Link to the YouTube is in the TikTok bio. But I'll be talking to the draft live on TikTok as well. And just talking general fantasy strategy as we head into peak fantasy draft season, guys. This is the best time of year. This is hands down the best time of year. This is when all of your favorite players are going to absolutely smash in fantasy. There hasn't been too many injuries yet. This is literally the peak time of year for me. I absolutely love it. CMC over JT is insane. I don't think it's insane, man. I don't think it's insane. Do I see an argument for JT over CMC? Sure. Do I see an argument for Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson over CMC? Sure. I could see those arguments, but I disagree with them. And I don't think it's crazy to be considering CMC at 1 overall. We've seen him have the second best fantasy season of all time in PPR leagues, specifically PPR. I think when you get to half PPR and non-PPR, there's a much worse case. And I had the second pick in this draft. And thank you to the Falcons creator who went Jonathan Taylor first overall. So I snagged CMC second overall in this draft. You absolutely love to see it. If you're watching live on TikTok, I'm going to go for this team. If I can get this team live in this draft, I'm literally doing now on YouTube. Again, you can come to the YouTube live to literally see the draft board live as it's happening. TikTok has not given me the ability to live stream from my computer, despite my constant requests. So you can only see the draft board live on YouTube. So come to the YouTube live. You can literally see pick by pick as this draft that I'm doing happens. And there's members of the audience in this draft too. Come to the YouTube live. Link is in the TikTok bio. Who do you like at the 5 spot? 5 is for me. I go after Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson. I'm going Jamar Chase. And I think this is where the draft really opens up. You can go a lot of different directions from the 5 spot. This is typically the first 4 picks in the draft I'm doing right now. By the way, the $3 best ball draft on Underdog with members of this live stream. Jonathan Taylor went first overall. That seems pretty standard in most drafts I've seen. I took Christian McCaffrey at 2nd overall. Cooper Kupp went 3rd overall, and Justin Jefferson went 4th overall. Those are the top 4 in my clear opinion. Those are the top 4 guys. They should be the top 4 guys in basically every single fantasy draft. After that, I think you can make a lot of different arguments, but I go Jamar Chase at 5 overall, and that's who just went at 5th overall in this draft from our Packers creator. Guys, Jamar Chase just had arguably, I'm not saying it was, but it arguably was the best rookie wide receiver season of all time. And he's going into year 2 with a better offensive line, a young quarterback who also could take a step forward. I'm not going to fade Jamar Chase, and I'm taking him at 5th overall. I want the safety of a good young receiver at 5 overall. I think every running back left has some semblance of risk. Our Lions creator had the 6th overall pick. He went with Austin Eckler. I know he's very much in the camp, by the way, of taking Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson with the top 2 picks. And I understand that argument. I think if you're trying to play it safe, if you are making sure you're not going to lose your league in the first round, then take Cooper Kupp, take Justin Jefferson, especially in PPR formats. These guys have much less injury risk than every running back. The wide receiver position is just automatically safer than running backs. That being said, when you hit on a running back, the reward is bigger because there's less elite running backs than there is wide receivers that can have some spike weeks. Going through the rest of the first round, again, you can watch this draft live on YouTube as it's happening, pick by pick. You can literally see the draft board as it's happening. Let me zoom in a little bit for the YouTube fam. We are about to be through the first round. It went Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, then Jamar Chase, Austin Eckler, Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry, and man, where Derrick Henry's going in drafts right now, I can't wait to see how his season pans out because if Derrick Henry stays healthy, he could easily be the number 1 overall running back. He's the first running back in NFL history to have 3 straight seasons, averaging over 100 rushing yards per game. Absolutely insane. There's only a couple guys that have ever done it in 2 straight seasons. He's done it in 3 straight seasons. He just has to stay healthy. But there's a lot of tread on the tires, man, and he's heading into his age 29 season. So I understand the concern with Derrick Henry as well, and that's why I would take Austin Eckler and Dalvin Cook, I think, ahead of Derrick Henry. Stephon Diggs was the 4th receiver taken. I agree with that. Najee Harris goes 10th overall. And really, like this back end, this beginning part of the second round, we're starting to see like the end of, I think, the elite options in fantasy. And this is why I like drafting the back end of the draft. If I don't get Christian McCaffrey or any of these top 4 guys, I think I'd prefer to be in the back end of the draft because you're pairing guys like Stephon Diggs with Alvin Kamara, who in a normal situation would probably be a first-round pick. Saquon Barclay, I think, has round 1 upside. CeeDee Lamb could literally lead the league in receiving. I actually think I'd put a small future on CeeDee Lamb to lead the league in receiving yards because without Amari Cooper and the talent of CeeDee Lamb taking just another small step forward, CeeDee Lamb can absolutely go off. Why do you like Javonte Williams analysis? Yeah, so Javonte Williams is a guy that I'm in on, and I understand that he's risky. And as you know, I don't really shy away from risk in fantasy football. I think Javonte Williams fits the bill to have a pretty good shot to be this year's Jonathan Taylor. He had about a 50% of the backfield for the Broncos last season. If that can go up to 70% this season with a new coaching staff, a new quarterback, a better offense, if he can get from 50% of the backfield in his rookie year to 70% in his second year, which I think is very reasonable, I think that's very possible. If that happens, I think he could easily be this year's Jonathan Taylor. I think he could score 15 plus touchdowns. I think he could get 300 plus receiving yards and over 1,000 yards on the ground. I think he can be an absolute beast. He's that efficient. He doesn't need 80, 90% of the workload like a Najee Harris because he is one of the best tackle breakers in the league. Last season, Javonte Williams, he was 6th in the league in yards created. He was 7th in the league in yards per touch. Yards created per touch, excuse me. The volume wasn't there last year for Javonte Williams. He was only 23rd in red zone touches, 15th in carries, 31st in snap share. He only had 50% snap rate last season. All right, I'm on the clock. I got to cool it off about my Javonte Williams take. I'm back on the clock. I think I'm going to go with Tyreek Hill with this pick. Best player available. I will draft 8 receivers on this team. Optimal best ball strategy, by the way, for people that haven't played best ball before. Best ball is different. There's no in-season management. So all you do is the draft, which is why I like it so much because I can do so many drafts in preparation for draft season and not have to worry about the in-season management. So there's no starting and sitting. There's no adding and dropping. There's no trading. So you get screwed with injuries, but everybody gets screwed with injuries. And that's why roster construction is the most important thing. And we've crunched the numbers on this. The most optimal roster construction in this format. I feel like I got it. I'm going Kyle Pitts. I'm sticking to my notepad here. The most optimal roster construction in best ball, it's 2 quarterbacks, 5 running backs, 8 wide receivers, 3 tight ends. That's the most optimal roster construction. And I think, honestly, just knowing that alone, and again, we analyze literally hundreds of thousands of drafts to arrive at those numbers for best ball drafts, you could probably make some solid ROI doing best ball drafts. And that's why I've done close to 450 of them this offseason. All right, thoughts on Ramondre Stevenson? Yeah, man, I'm in on Mondre season. I'm really excited for it. I think part of the reason I'm in on Mondre too is every year the Patriots running backs they go so late. They go so late in fantasy drafts because there's this stigma around Patriots running backs that you never want to have them because good luck predicting the Bill Belichick usage. Like, good luck. We're going to see Jonas Gray in week 7 score 4 touchdowns. But in reality, that's, I think, a little bit overblown. I think we can project the roles pretty well, honestly, heading into the season. Damien Harris, he's going to be getting at least 50% of the carries. He's going to be the leading running back on first downs. He's probably going to get the goal line work for the most part. But Ramondre Stevenson's going to get probably at least 40% of the backfield work, and he's going to get the valuable third down role that James White had. And Ty Montgomery might take just a tiny bit of that too. But Mondre is the most talented back, I would argue, in this backfield. He is the most upside. I'm in on taking Mondre over Damien Harris. I actually took Damien Harris in my first high-stakes draft, but he went 60 picks after his average draft position. I don't want Damien Harris, but if he's going to fall literally 4 rounds after his average draft position, I'm going to take him. And that's pretty true for honestly any player. Like as much as I hate a player, and I'm going to be releasing my do not draft list some point probably next week, as much as I hate some players at their cost, if they slide 4 rounds past where they're typically drafted, I'm going to pull the trigger because I'm not so naive to think I'm that much smarter than average draft position. All right, what are your thoughts on getting Evans and Fournette late second round? I don't think I want both of them, but either of them I think are good options on their own. Mike Evans went 1 pick before Tyreek Hill. I wouldn't take him before Tyreek Hill personally, but he does have really, really, really tremendous touchdown ceilings. Crazy touchdown ceiling for Mike Evans. Chris Godwin is still banged up. Julio Jones, Russell Gage are there as replacements. Gage is dealing with an injury now. I honestly think people are overrating Julio Jones just a tiny bit. I'm excited to see him play with Tom Brady. I think he could have an interesting red zone role, but it's been a couple of years since we've seen Julio Jones be truly fantasy relevant. I think Russell Gage honestly fits the Antonio Brown role a lot better than what Julio Jones is going to do. I think Julio Jones could fit maybe the Gronk role a little bit better though. Jefferson or Chase, everyone says Jefferson, but I could see Chase doing better. Chase absolutely could do better. Like nothing is going to shock me. Nothing Jamar Chase could do is going to shock me at this point. If Jamar Chase finishes as the wide receiver 1 overall in fantasy, that's not going to surprise me that much. It's just not. We saw him have arguably the best rookie wide receiver season of all time. And historically speaking, the year 2 is when receivers tend to have their breakout season. So what if that wasn't even Jamar Chase's breakout season? What if the improved offensive line in another year under Joe Burrow's belt, we see an even better Jamar Chase season? That is absolutely possible. And if that happens, he's probably going to be the wide receiver 1 in fantasy. I'm still taking Justin Jefferson over him though, because we've seen 2 years from it. We've seen 2 years from Justin Jefferson. We've seen arguably the best 2 years to start a career. And I'm taking the best 2 years to start a career over the best year to start a career. But I still won't be surprised either way. And then Cooper Kupp's coming off, one of the best just pure receiver seasons of all time. He scored, 450 PPR points or something insane like that last year. I think you got to be taking Cooper Kupp over Jamar Chase too. But, all 3 guys. That's why I'm taking all 3 top 5. Jamar Chase is my 5th overall player in fantasy. I posted a video about that just a couple days ago. I'm taking Jamar Chase over Austin Eckler. I'm taking Jamar Chase over Dalvin Cook. I'm taking him over Derrick Henry. I think he's the 5th safest player, maybe the 3rd safest player in fantasy. Jerry Jeudy's going in round 4. Courtland Sutton's going in round 4. Absolutely love to see that as someone who's taken both of them in my season-long leagues a little bit later than that. I'm going to be back on the clock. And guys, if you're watching live on YouTube, man, you got to prepare for this in your drafts. This is why you got to be tuned in and why I'm glad some people are tuned in right now in preparation for your own fantasy drafts. Because a lot of your league members, they haven't even started thinking about fantasy yet, and you already have a leg up on them. Look at the running backs left. We're in the 4th round. Look at the running backs left. The teardrop is just so absolutely insane. Travis Etienne, by the way, he went round 3 in this draft, so I'm not going to get him in round 4 like I was hoping. I'm pretty sure Juju is also, no, he's not off the board, so I will go with Juju a tiny bit early in this draft because I want as much Juju as possible in fantasy football. Taking him over Marquise Brown, over Gabe Davis, over Deontay Johnson, over Brandon Cooks. I don't feel great about taking him over Marquise Brown in a best ball draft because I think Marquise Brown's going to have some massive spike weeks. But I'm in on Juju Smith-Schuster as a guy that could potentially be this year's Cooper Kupp. Guys, he's going from Big Ben in his last season, Big Ben's worst season, where Big Ben's average depth of target was bottom 5 in the league. The dude could not throw it more than 10 yards down the field, to Patrick Mahomes in the prime of his career. They're probably, you look at Drew Lock to Russell Wilson in the Broncos. I think that's probably not even as big of a jump as end of career Big Ben to Patrick Mahomes. That jump is just absolutely ludicrous. I am back on the clock. I am going to take AJ Dillon in round 5 here. So I went Juju in round 4 and actually AJ Dillon in round 5. This is a sharp draft. I'm drafting with people who are literally on this live stream preparing for the fantasy drafts in early August. I want AJ Dillon. I want Juju Smith-Schuster, and I'm not going to be scared to reach just a tiny bit to get the guys that I want in fantasy. And I only have 1 running back too at this point. I need a second one. So I rocked with AJ Dillon. I took AJ Dillon over David Montgomery, over Elijah Mitchell, over Josh Jacobs, over J.K. Dobbins. And one of those guys will probably end up outperforming him, but I bet AJ Dillon outperforms the other 4. I also took him over Cam Akers, which is definitely a little bit risky. But honestly, guys, AJ Dillon is a super safe pick. he is going to get minimum 50% of their carries in the backfield. I saw a report today, A.J. Dillon could get also 50% of the targets in the backfield. There was a quote from Aaron Rodgers today that both A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones could eclipse, 60 catches or 50 catches this season, and it's absolutely possible with no Devante Adams in the picture. And then you also just factor in the chance that Aaron Jones picks up an injury, and all of a sudden A.J. Dillon, top 10 running back in fantasy football, that you're getting in the 5th round. So that's why I'm swinging for the fences when it comes to A.J. Dillon. Also, we also just love A.J. Dillon because he's an absolute man, and his quads are the size of my entire body. Thoughts on Darnell Mooney? I'm in on Darnell Mooney. He hasn't really – I think I read he's probably not going to play in the preseason, which is good. Hopefully the hype stays down on Darnell Mooney. I think he has a chance to be a high-end wide receiver too. I wouldn't expect wide receiver 1 production out of anyone on the Bears. The Bears are going to be really bad. The Bears arguably have a bottom 5 offensive line in the league, but the competition against Darnell Mooney is absolutely nothing. It's Velus Jones, Byron Pringle. These are the top receivers after Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney is probably going to have close to 100% snap rate, probably 100% route participation. The reports all offseason were that Darnell Mooney was just purely working on conditioning because he knew he was literally going to be in every play of every game. And that's what you want in fantasy. That's what's going to lead to consistency for Darnell Mooney. 10 plus targets a game. Like, this is what he has in his range of outcomes, but he also has a really deep route profile. Like, he was seeing a lot of air yards last year too. The big question for Darnell Mooney is similar to the big question for Elijah Moore. It's, can Justin Fields take that second-year leap? Because if he does, if Justin Fields' deep ball accuracy just improves a tiny bit, Darnell Mooney is going to absolutely dominate. Darnell Mooney was 7th in target separation in the league last year. He was 13th in air yards. I think he could be top 10 in air yards this season. So yeah, I'm in on Darnell Mooney. Should I take Evans or Pitts at 3.2? Yeah, I would lean Evans over Pitts. I like Pitts a lot. I took Pitts in round 3 of this draft, second pick of round 3. I'm in on Kyle Pitts. Drafting Kyle Pitts is essentially you get to put a wide receiver in your tight end slot. That's what Kyle Pitts is. He is a wide receiver playing tight end. That's how good Kyle Pitts is. Last year, they asked Travis Kelsey who he thinks the future best tight end in the league is going to be, and he didn't hesitate. He said Kyle Pitts because Travis Kelsey knows the 4th overall pick in the 2021 draft, who has a 99th percentile speed score and literally the hands of a receiver, is not going to be able to be covered as a tight end by linebackers. That's what we're going to see from Kyle Pitts. That's why I'm refused to be 1 year late on Kyle Pitts. I want to be 1 year early on Kyle Pitts because it's only a matter of time until Kyle Pitts is in the conversation as the number 1 overall tight end in fantasy football. I took Williams in 2nd round. Give me hope. Yeah, I'm in on Javonte Williams. I don't think it's a safe pick in fantasy. I think it's a relatively risky pick because you're drafting a guy that had only 50% of the workload in the backfield last season in the 2nd round, and he's competing against the same guy he was last year in Melvin Gordon. But he was also one of the most efficient running backs in the league, and his team's also upgrading from Drew Lock to Russell Wilson. The only bigger upgrade any player in the NFL is getting this season is from Big Ben to Patrick Mahomes, and that's Juju. And there was so much movement this offseason in the NFL that this is the year I think people who really pay attention to the news and research for their fantasy drafts are just going to have such a massive advantage. Like, if you aren't aware that Juju Smith-Schuster is going from Big Ben in the last and worst year of his career to Patrick Mahomes in literally the prime of his career, arguably a top 2 quarterback in the NFL. You can make the argument, I think, for number 1 in the NFL. And they just lost Tyreek Hill too. And I'm going to take Trey Lance with this pick. And I feel like I haven't been able to get very much Trey Lance because people are so aggressively drafting Trey Lance, but I want to be in on Trey Lance. I just took him at the very second last pick of the 6th round. Trey Lance has the making of the next big fantasy football quarterback. He obviously has the legs. We have seen a game. We have one example of Trey Lance getting 16 carries in a single game. That's like running back 1 production you're getting on top of all of his passing. That would be absolutely insane if he can pull out some games like that this season. Even if he's closer to 10 carries a game, he'll probably finish top 5 in the league in rushing yards at the quarterback position, which means he'll probably finish as a top 10 fantasy football quarterback. I'm back on the clock here, and I'm gonna run it back after taking A.J. Dillon. I'm going to take A.J. Dillon light with Tony Pollard here with my 7th round pick. And I'm in on Tony Pollard in the 7th round. I'm honestly really liking how this draft is coming together, even though I feel like I'm drafting for the Bestball Mania, which is a 100,000 person tournament. And this is really a 12-person draft. So this team's probably going to come in first or last. But I take Tony Pollard in the 7th round. I really think Tony Pollard can be an exception to the case. And the case I'm talking about is every offseason we hear So-and-so insert running back is going to be used more in the passing game this season. Insert running back could be seen in the slot in almost every year. That's not true. We've seen it so many times. We literally saw it with Nyheim Hines last season, and now we're seeing it again with Nyheim Hines this season. But I think Tony Pollard could be the exception. Tony Pollard has the talent to be the exception, and he's in a situation where the exception would make sense. Look at the receivers for the Cowboys. And after a healthy CeeDee Lamb, you have an injured Michael Gallup who's likely going to miss the first at least month of the season. He got injured pretty late into last season. And then a rookie in Jalen Tolbert and Noah Brown, who is definitely not even like close to a starting caliber wide receiver in the NFL. And then you have Dalton Schultz. I think that Tony Pollard could be number 3 on this team in receiving until Michael Gallup returns. And that's going to be huge in fantasy. And then you add in, again, like A.J. Dillon, you add in the chance where Zeke picks up an injury, and all of a sudden Tony Pollard's a top 10 running back in fantasy football. Arguably the most talented backup running back in the entire league is Tony Pollard. And we've seen Zeke start to slow down at the end of last season. And, I mean, he played the whole year. I think Zeke's going to absolutely get fed when healthy. But he's had a lot of touches his way. It's not going to be the most shocking thing if Zeke picks up a few injuries throughout the season. Certainly not what I'm rooting for. I would never root for injuries. I'm just saying it does factor in to Tony Pollard's ceiling. Trey Lance and Brandon Ayuk, an underrated stack. Yeah, it's absolutely an underrated stack. And I'm honestly one of the players I'm most nervous about in round 2. And I made a video about how I think round 2 should go in season-long 12-person PPR drafts today on TikTok. Check that out if you haven't seen it. But one of the guys that was in that video was Deebo Samuel. And I'm honestly probably most nervous of all guys. And I actually took him in my high-stakes league at the end of round 2 because he slid a little bit past average draft position. And I'm just willing to bet on the talent of Deebo. But with all the reports coming out of 49ers camp and with the quarterback change, quarterback change adds a little bit of risk to Deebo. And I'm not saying that Trey Lance is worse than Jimmy G, but he plays differently than Jimmy G. And maybe Trey Lance style fits Brandon Ayuk a little bit more than it fits Deebo Samuel. It's certainly a possibility. And if that's happening, I mean, you're getting Brandon Ayuk in round 6 while Deebo's going in round 2. I am a tiny bit concerned about Deebo. That being said, Deebo Samuel was the most efficient wide receiver in the NFL last season, and it wasn't even close. He also happened to score 6 rushing touchdowns, which probably isn't going to happen again. But he also led the league in yards per target, led the league in yards per reception, and it honestly wasn't even close. The crazy part of that, too, is his average depth of target wasn't that deep, so he wasn't getting deep passes. Deebo Samuel was just, every touch he had, he was just such a beast after the catch that he ended up being the most efficient guy in the league. Number 1 in yards per target, 18.2 yards per reception. He had the second most yards after the catch, probably only after Cooper Kupp. He was 3rd in fantasy points per game, but again, he scored 6 rushing touchdowns. But again, yeah, I'm willing to bet on the talent with Deebo. So I'm not gonna draft scared. I'm still gonna close my eyes and draft Deebo Samuel. But I am just a tiny bit concerned that he won't mesh as well with Trey Lance as Brandon Ayuk has. And Mondre Stevenson gets picked in the 8th round. Again, if you're watching live on TikTok, you can see this draft live on YouTube as the draft board's going on. Literally in a live draft right now. So far through the first 7 rounds, I had the 2nd overall pick. I have Christian McCaffrey, who we'd love to get. We got Tyreek Hill, Kyle Pitts in round 3, which we absolutely love to see. We have Juju Smith-Schuster I took in round 4, A.J. Dillon I took in round 5, Trey Lance in round 6, and Tony Pollard in round 7. This is a very Sam Factor draft. I'm feeling honestly pretty good about this so far as it started. Aaron Jones or Saquon? I think I put Saquon over Aaron Jones in the video I posted today, but it's certainly close. Saquon's ceiling is so high. I think the risk-reward scenario with Saquon in round 2 is similar to the risk-reward scenario with Christian McCaffrey in round 1. I don't think either offense is going to be very good, but I think both guys, the talent is there for them to finish as the number 1 overall running back. And in round 2, you got to press the button on Saquon, man. You got to press the button on Saquon. You don't want to draft scared. Again, both guys, this is the thing. I understand there's a lot of you watching this live, a lot of people who probably have already left this live who are like, man, this guy's drafting CMC and Saquon. Is he literally trying to come in last place? We know these guys are going to get hurt. But do you really know? Do you really know that they're going to get hurt? Do they have a slightly higher risk of injury? Yeah, I will give you that. But historically speaking, we are absolutely terrible at predicting which guys are going to get hurt because it's a mostly random thing. Last year, everybody fading Joe Mixon. Oh, we know Joe Mixon, he has the injury bug. Don't draft Joe Mixon. He's going to get hurt. Joe Mixon was one of 4 players to play in every single game last season and see at least 5 carries. But it's not something we can predict very well. So you want to just bet on the guys that have the highest ceiling. And that's Christian McCaffrey in round 1, and it's Saquon Barclay in round 2. I'm going to go with this is actually a tough one. I think I'm going to go Olave with my first pick here. I do only have 2 receivers, so I need to snag a 3rd receiver. I have Tyreek Hill, Juju, and Olave now. Dallas Goedert, Samps snags for me. I already had Kyle Pitts, though, so I don't want to take a tight end. And I'm going to go with Skye Moore with my next pick. I want to be taking bets on these Chiefs receivers, and I already have Juju on this team. Mecole Hardman did pick up an injury today in practice. He got carted off. It sounded actually pretty good, though, after the fact. It was a groin injury. Doesn't sound like it's a non-contact knee injury or anything like that. I do think Mecole Hardman will be back hopefully at some point this season, but obviously it's never a good sign when you get carted off the practice field. And Skye Moore is the guy that I think has the highest ceiling on the Chiefs receiving depth chart after Juju. We know what Marquez Valdes-Scantling is. Like, we've seen Marquez Valdes-Scantling with a really good back-to-back MVP at quarterback. And I think we're going to see something similar with him on the Chiefs. I think he's going to have some big weeks. I don't think it's going to be easy to predict when those big weeks are going to come. Skye Moore, though, I think has a slightly higher ceiling than that. He's got 90th percentile speed, second-round pick. I think he could be more than just a vertical stretch route runner like what Marquez Valdes-Scantling is. I think he could have more in his route tree than Scantling. And I think that's an exciting piece to get on the Chiefs. Plus, I think Marquez Valdes-Scantling, I don't think – has he been picked yet? I don't think so. I think he's near the top. Yeah, he'll probably get picked soon. Again, you can watch this draft live on YouTube. Kenneth Walker goes in the 9th round. A lot of Kenneth Walker in the news today. Definitely leaving bad Juju and CMC off my roster this year. Juju has burned me for years. And this is why I love fantasy, man. Because people go in with this mindset that past years automatically mean things for this year. And again, I think this is going to be one of those years where people who are prepared for their fantasy drafts and did their research ahead of time and followed the news this offseason, they're going to have a massive advantage. Juju Smith-Schuster, he's going from Big Ben in the literal last year of Ben Roethlisberger's career. Let me read you some Ben Roethlisberger stats from last season, just to get a sense of how bad Big Ben was in his last season. His adjusted yards per attempt, 27th in the league. His air yards per attempt, which was just how far, on average, per attempt, Big Ben was throwing the ball downfield last season. 32nd in the NFL. For those of you doing the math at home, there's only 32 teams in the league. Big Ben was last in the league in his average depth of target. He was incapable of throwing the ball more than a few yards down the field. 6.7 yards, air yards per attempt. That's not even yards per target. That's air yards per attempt. 6.7. He's upgrading from that to Patrick Mahomes this offseason. And if you don't expect that to help Juju in fantasy, I don't understand where you're coming from. He's going to from that to Patrick Mahomes, who threw the 6th most air yards in the league last year. He was 4th in deep ball attempts per game. And Juju obviously isn't the super deep threat, but it's going to have a huge lift for Juju going from Big Ben to Patrick Mahomes. And that's why I'm willing to take bets on Juju. We've also already seen Juju have a top 10 wide receiver performance in fantasy. And he's literally only, 25, 26 years old. It's not like Juju is one of these guys heading into his 30s and he's clearly on the decline. Juju Smith-Schuster is literally 25 years old, and he's about to be playing with by far the best quarterback of his career on a team that literally just lost Tyreek Hill. So yeah, I'm in on Juju. Thoughts on James Cook? I'm starting to get a little bit of cold feet with James Cook. I'm still pulling the trigger late in drafts, round 10, round 11 is where I think he's been going in a few drafts. He has the talent, man. 94th percentile speed. I made my video about my top rookies in fantasy right after the draft, and James Cook was on that list. I think James Cook, I'm not going to complain about someone who's Dalvin Cook's brother. I literally think that's what James Cook's ceiling is, but then he's also on the Bills, which should be the top offense in the NFL. That being said, we do know Devin Singletary is going to be involved. We do know Josh Allen's going to steal goal line work. And by reports at a camp, Zach Moss is also looking like he's going to have a role. So where's the consistent role in fantasy for James Cook? I think it's going to be a little while, and it's going to take some injuries for us to have confidence with James Cook in our starting lineup. So I'm a little out on James Cook. And honestly, all the running backs left at this point, you really got to tell a pretty reasonable story about for fantasy purposes. Darrell Henderson, maybe he could be in a two-headed backfield with Cam Akers, best case scenario, but he'll probably need an injury to really break out in fantasy. Isaiah Spiller, Rashad White, definite backups as rookies, but I like the talent for both of them. Alexander Mattison, I'd argue, is one of the best, most talented backup running backs in the league. Julio Jones is at the top of the list right now. I don't think I can pull the trigger on Julio. I feel like Samps, in our Falcons creator, is going to go with Julio. I know he does like him. Instead, I'm actually going to go reach a tiny bit for Nyheim Hines as I just secure the headlines of guys that are going to be playing in the slot this season. I'll go with Nyheim Hines. And honestly, my general strategy in best ball drafts specifically, but also all PPR leagues, I just want to draft running backs I know will have a receiving role. And Nyheim Hines fits that bill. I don't think Nyheim Hines is nearly the ceiling, though, of Tony Pollard or an A.J. Dillon. I will be on the clock in one more pick very soon. Rashad White goes to our Falcons creator. with the next pick. I have right now 1 quarterback, 4 running backs, 4 wide receivers. Romeo Dubes, Dubs. I think it's Dubs, not Dubes, but my heart tells me to say Dubes, but I think it's actually Romeo Dubs. He gets picked. I'm actually going to go with another running back and wrap up my running backs in this draft. I kind of want to go Darrell Henderson. I'm actually going to go with Julio instead. Going wide receiver. I think there'll be an okay running back for me to get as my 5th running back. Again, the roster construction I go for in these best ball drafts is 2 quarterbacks, 5 running backs, 8 receivers, 3 tight ends. I have Williams, Juju, and Cup. Absolutely love to see that. Where do you rank Edmonds? I'm well ahead of ADP on Edmonds. I think he's the most talented running back on the Miami Dolphins. But he's definitely, his risk to me is factored into his price. He's going as the 89th player in fantasy drafts right now, which is if you do the math, what is that? 89 divided by 12. He's going in the 7th round. I've seen him go 8th, 9th round in some season-long leagues. I think that's fantastic value, especially in PPR leagues. This is a guy that was 23rd in fantasy points per game just last year in a backup role. He was top 24. He was a running back 2 last year in fantasy points per game in a backup role, and he's not in a backup role likely this season. He's probably going to have more touches per game this year. He's a guy that's been top 10 in yards per touch each of the last 2 years. He's a very efficient running back. I don't think people quite realize how efficient Chase Edmonds has been because he's such an effective receiver out of the backfield. And I think they're going to use him really effectively with the Dolphins. I think he's going to find a really good role there. What do you think about Derek Carr? I actually did a Superflex draft at the Fantasy Expo with a bunch of our content creators. I think there was 12 of us at the Expo together. We did a Superflex draft. I took Derek Carr in the 3rd round of that Superflex draft, 1 pick ahead of Trey Lance. I took Trey Lance in this draft ahead of Derek Carr. I don't feel great about taking Derek Carr ahead of Trey Lance. That being said, Derek Carr has arguably the best weapons in the NFL at the quarterback position. There might not be a single quarterback with better weapons than Derek Carr. Maybe Joe Burrow. But Derek Carr, he's got a top 5 tight end. He has a top 3 wide receiver. And then Hunter Renfrow is also quietly one of the best route runners in the league, one of the best red zone threats. I think that Derek Carr could take a massive leap this season. It's just not going to be surprising. Just look at what's around him. The addition of Devante Adams is just so massive. Pitts is available way later. Don't waste 3rd on him. It depends on the draft you're in. Late 3rd, though, in a 12-person league, I'm pulling the trigger on Kyle Pitts. Again, you're getting essentially a wide receiver in your tight end slot with Kyle Pitts. And people don't quite realize just how good Kyle Pitts is yet because he only scored 1 touchdown last season. And that really suppressed his fantasy points. And we know that touchdowns are the most unpredictable thing in fantasy. What predicts touchdowns the best is targets and yards. And you look at the numbers in air yards. And we look at the numbers for Kyle Pitts, 5th in targets last season, 2nd in air yards last season. Kyle Pitts is going to score more than 1 touchdown this season. I think he's going to go for 10 plus. I think he's the clear number 1 receiving option on the Falcons. I think he's really the only tight end outside of Kelsey and Andrews who has a shot at to be a 30% target rate in his offense. I'm in on Kyle Pitts. We've also already seen Marcus Mariota sustain a top 5 fantasy tight end in multiple seasons with Delanie Walker in his rookie in I think 1st, 2nd, 3rd year in the league. Delanie Walker was a top 10 tight end in fantasy all 3 of those years. I know that was a long time ago. Drew Ogletree tore his ACL. Is that very recent news? I'm high on Juju. Yeah, I'm W. I am high on Juju as well. I did Etienne and Elijah Moore, and he gets Judy and Chase Edmonds. Yeah, if you're getting Etienne and Elijah Moore, I would probably do that one. I would probably do that trade. I do like that. Kamara or Javonte Williams? Yeah, I'd lean Kamara. And I've been nervous all offseason about the Kamara thing, and I'll just rehash that for everyone really quick on this live if you haven't been up to date on the Alvin Kamara stuff. Everyone, I just posted a video of what I think round 2 should be. And Alvin Kamara is in that video, and a lot of people are like, why isn't Alvin Kamara in round 1? Because they haven't been paying attention to the news this offseason. But the reason he's been going later in drafts, and he's been going round 3 for basically the whole last month, is because people were scared he was going to get suspended because of what happened at the Pro Bowl this year. And at the Pro Bowl this year, Alvin Kamara went out the night before the Pro Bowl. He physically assaulted someone on video. The video is not public, and he's on trial for that. And I get the whole innocent until proven guilty thing, but there's literally a video of it. And we know there's a video of it, but it's not public. And in the past, when the video leaks is when the suspension comes. It has nothing to do with the actual case. The video hasn't leaked, so it seems like the video is not going to leak. But if the video does leak at literally any point this season, Kamara is going to get suspended, almost definitely, because the backlash from the public is not going to be good. The video is not going to be good. That being said, the case that he's actually in got postponed until after this season, and the video hasn't leaked, and all signs are pointing to that not happening. So it looks like he's not going to get suspended this season. He probably will get suspended for like 4 to 6 games next season. So yeah, like all that being considered, I'm taking him in early round 2, and I wouldn't like knock you for taking him in round 1. He's been I think he's the most receiving yards of any running back over the last 2 years. He's been a top 5 fantasy football running back, top 4, I think, each of the last 2 years in fantasy points per game. I'm going to go with Michael Carter with this next pick. I've been taking a lot of Breece Hall. I like to draft some insurance picks sometimes with some of their backups when I draft a guy a lot. For example, I have been taking Christian McCaffrey. Sorry, not Christian McCaffrey. I have been taking Javonte Williams a lot in round 2. And so I'm happy to follow that up with Melvin Gordon, like in the middle rounds as well in some other drafts, just to hedge a little bit against my Javonte Williams bet. But Michael Carter's a guy I really liked last year. I'm in on Breece Hall. I think Breece Hall is better than Michael Carter. But I think Michael Carter will still have some sort of pass down role on the Jets this season. I don't think we're going to see Breece Hall all of a sudden just get like an 80% workload. I think like best case scenario for Breece Hall is like 60 to 65%. I think that's more than enough for Breece Hall to ball out and still have Michael Carter have some sort of value. And I really like the talent, though, of Michael Carter. If Breece Hall were to go down, I think Michael Carter would instantly jump into the top 20 running back conversation. And that's the type of running backs I want to bet on late in drafts. Michael Carter, as a rookie, 13th in the league in yards per touch. He was 8th in yards per reception. And really, like on film, too, he popped as a guy that clearly has the ability to be a good receiving back out of the backfield. Only one wide receiver in first 6 rounds. Is that true? Is that what I did? Let's see. No, I went 2 wide receivers in the first 6 rounds. I got Tyreek Hill and Juju Smith-Schuster, the former Chief and the current Chief. But I think if you're looking at what I have on TikTok here, you're saying only one wide receiver in the first 6 rounds. These are just generally guys I want to target. There's like no chance I get all 6 of these guys in a draft. But if there's one position that I'm okay only taking one of in the first 6 rounds, it's probably wide receiver, because I have a lot of confidence in my ability to identify pretty good receivers after the first 6 rounds. I am not so confident in my ability to find league-winning running backs after the first 6 rounds. I mean, the drop-off is just so insanely steep, where in round 7, you're still able to get really talented, potentially top receivers on teams. Kadarius Toney, Christian Kirk, DeAndre Hopkins. I know he's suspended for the first 6 games, but he comes back probably top 15 wide receiver. Drake London, Chris Olave. Robert Woods is going in round 9, round 10. I think he's going to be the number 1 receiver for the Titans. Like, these are guys that I feel okay filling my roster out with, much more than some of the running backs going in that range, some of the tight ends going in that range. Like, if I don't take Kyle Pitts, Mark Andrews, Travis Kelsey in the first 3 rounds, or Dalton Schultz in like round 6, then I'm going to punt the position entirely. And I'm probably not going to take a tight end until at least round 14. I'm going to literally wait that long. And I'm probably going to end up with like Evan Ingram or someone disgusting like that. But I'll probably end up finding someone on the waiver wire throughout the season. Obviously, this is a best ball draft, so it's a little bit different. I actually think that even more incentivizes early tight end in best ball format. Kelsey or Andrews. I have Kelsey ranked ahead of Andrews, but Andrews was the number 1 tight end last season. And I think people sleep on how close it really is. Andrews led the league in yards per game, led the league in targets per game, led the league in fantasy points per game at the tight end position. Mark Andrews was 6th in the league last year in yards per game when you include receivers, in receiving yards per game. 5 receivers, top 5 in receiving yards per game, and then it's Mark Andrews. Kelsey was all the way down at like 15. And then they lost Marquise Brown this offseason. So it's unlikely that his target share goes down this year for Mark Andrews. I'm also just very in on Lamar. I think much more so than most people. My bold prediction for the season, by the way, is that Lamar Jackson wins his 2nd unanimous MVP, becoming the only player in league history in over 100 years that this league has existed, the only player in league history to win 2 unanimous MVPs. That's one of my bold predictions for this season. I also think the Ravens are sneaky Super Bowl contenders. Who should I start in my flex? Hunter Renfrow, Damien Harris, or Elijah Moore? Love to see start-sit questions, man. I would go generally week 1. You lost your mind. This is a bold prediction, man. You can't knock someone for bold predictions. It's the reason it's a bold prediction. But the start-sit decisions in week 1, man, like for the most part, go with the guy you drafted earliest. There's a reason you drafted them earlier. Round 1 is honestly one of the easiest weeks to make start-sit decisions. You can't really knock yourself for wrong start-sit decisions in week 1. Obviously, you want to play the matchups like at least a little bit, but at the same time, you don't want to overthink week 1. Play your best players. Play the guys you drafted the earliest. What's so appealing about A.J. Dillon? A.J. Dillon has standalone value. First of all, like a weekly standalone value. What I mean by that is I think he's going to produce RB2 to RB3 numbers. So running back 24 to running back 36 numbers without any injuries to Aaron Jones. He's supposedly going to get 50% of the carries in the Packers backfield, and he could get as much as 50% of the targets in the Packers backfield as well. In an offense without Devante Adams, in an offense that's probably still going to be top 10 in the league in points scored. So that's where the standalone value comes from. But then you also get the ceiling with A.J. Dillon. For if Aaron Jones does pick up an injury, A.J. Dillon's literally top 10, maybe top 5 running back in fantasy football. And you're going to win your league if that happens. So you have the safety of the running back 2, running back 3 value from A.J. Dillon, but you also have the ceiling of literally winning your league. And that's exactly what I want. After round 5, round 6, that's literally what I'm drafting for. That's why I'm drafting literally all of these guys. Like, you can make similar stories for all 6 of these guys to be league winners. And that's I'm drafting to win the league. I'm not drafting for second place. I'm not drafting to avoid last place. I'm drafting to come in first place in my fantasy league. And I don't understand drafting any other way. That's just my mentality. All right. We're back on the clock. I'm going to go with Marvin Jones as my 7th receiver. The quarterbacks on the board are absolutely disgusting. And I do already have Trey Lance. I'm only going to draft one other quarterback. I will draft one more receiver and maybe one more tight end, though I don't need to draft 3 tight ends because I did take Kyle Pitts. David Njoku has been slowly becoming one of my favorite late round tight ends because I think he's going to be an every down player for the Browns. They just gave him a contract extension. And I feel like people don't quite realize what type of athlete David Njoku is. He was a first-round pick back in 2017. He's an 80th percentile speed scorer. And he just hasn't seen anywhere close to reasonable volume at the NFL level yet. He hasn't averaged more than 7 fantasy points per game in his first, 5 seasons? He had one season, 2018, the second season. He had 9.6 fantasy points per game, which was 10th that season. But you look at the Browns depth chart now, and after Amari Cooper, I think David Njoku is probably one of their best pass catchers. I do expect them to be a run-heavy team, but I think Njoku could have some relatively big fantasy weeks. I don't think he's going to be at all consistent for season-long leagues, though. I switched to YouTube because there's less people. Yeah, YouTube's a little bit chiller, and also you can literally see the draft live as it's happening on YouTube. I have the draft board up, so come to the YouTube live. Link is in the TikTok bio. Also, guys, if you haven't checked out the WalterPicks app yet, I've spent over 3 years of my life at this point building the WalterPicks app. We literally just launched League Sync functionality, which allows you to sync our draft tool and our start sit tool and our trade analyzer tool directly to your ESPN, Yahoo, and Sleeper League. It is one of the most innovative tools in the fantasy space. There's very few, if any, mobile apps that have this functionality. So check it out. It's completely free to try. Almost everything in the app actually this season is going to be completely free. There's going to be like a few things behind paywall. League Sync will be one of those things, but we also give a completely free 7-day trial with any of our subscriptions. And our subscriptions start as low as $10 a month. So definitely give it a try. It's the number one way you could possibly support me. And even if you don't subscribe to the app, which I know the subscription is not for everyone, the best way you could possibly help me is just tossing us a 5-star review in the Apple App Store. That also helps us out absolutely so much. We're number 15 right now in the sports app rankings, which is an absolute dream come true and super exciting. But I want to beat our record of cracking the top 10 sometime before the season starts during peak fantasy season. So 5-star reviews will really, really help with that too. Especially if I get to your question, the one thing I ask for you costs you literally nothing other than a few seconds. Toss us a 5-star review in the App Store at WalterPicks. 12-man PPR with the 6th pick. Who should my top picks be? Yeah, if in a PPR league, like I'm praying that one of these 5 guys would drop back to you. The first 5 picks in this draft: Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. Those are the 5 guys I really, really want. After that, it opens up a little bit. I think I would lean Austin Eckler, then Dalvin Cook, then Derrick Henry, similar to how it went in this draft. I actually think this might be like close to exactly what I said how the first round should go. Someone check that. It might be almost exactly how I think the first round should go. Maybe I had Stephon Diggs a tiny bit earlier. I don't remember exactly. But yeah, like these 6 guys is probably who you're hoping for. But I think there's a little bit of a drop after Jamar Chase in drafts. Would you keep Dobbins or ETN in the 12th round? I would take ETN over Dobbins 100%. Dobbins is still coming back from an injury, and he doesn't have the same receiving upside that Travis Etienne has. Travis Etienne's another guy that I think people that aren't following football closely and don't know much about rookies, like if you're in a league where guys just generally you're drafting against don't know much about rookies, you got to be targeting Travis Etienne in the end of the 3rd round, beginning of the 4th round in your draft, because they don't know how good of a receiving back he really is yet. And it's going to become really clear pretty quickly to people how good Travis Etienne is going to be in PPR leagues. He could average 5+ catches a game, which would be top 3 in the league at the running back position. And if he does that, he's going to outperform, I think, his average position right now. Do you like David Montgomery's RB2 in a 10-man PPR? Already tossed 5-star review. Zach, thank you so much. And by the way, this is one of the best ways to get me to answer your comment. If you've literally already given us a 5-star review in the App Store, I really appreciate that. And I will try to get it to everyone's comment that does that. I also will get to all of the follower comments and YouTube comments I can. And I do appreciate if you haven't given us a 5-star review and I get to your comment, that's a really, really good way to reciprocate the love. I don't love David Montgomery as your second running back in a 10-man PPR. I think that's honestly pretty weak in a 10-man PPR league. Walter has been pretty high in the WalterPicks app on David Montgomery this whole offseason because he saw a huge workload last season. and he's been pretty efficient. But at the same time, the Bears' offensive line is absolute trash. They've been talking up Khalil Herbert all offseason. We've seen him be a pretty efficient running back when David Montgomery went down. David Montgomery was second in the league in snap share last season. He was fifth in the league in red zone touches. He was 12th in the league in fantasy points per game. He was pretty good last year. I'm a little bit nervous, though, just about this offense. Though, like that being said, you just look at the talent in the offense. After Darnell Mooney, it's David Montgomery is the clear most talented player in the offense. So at the same time, I could see him breaking the right way. But as your second running back, I think I would prefer him much more as my third running back. Let's see where David Montgomery went in this draft. David Montgomery was taken in the end of the fifth round. The very end of the fifth round. I took A.J. Dillon over David Montgomery in this draft. And honestly, that's probably a tad aggressive, taking A.J. Dillon over Cam Akers, Elijah Mitchell, David Montgomery. But I like the floor-ceiling combo I'm getting with A.J. Dillon, and that's why I'm making that bet. All right, I'm back on the clock. I think I took DJ Chark, so I'm going to go with Jared Goff. I did take DJ Chark. So I stack Goff with Chark. I like Goff, getting him in round pick 191. I mean, again, another guy that, like, the quarterback at this late in the draft, I'm just going to bet on the guys with the best talent around them. And Jared Goff has some pretty good talent around him. DeAndre Swift, one of the best receiving backs in the league. He had DJ Chark this offseason, who has been making some noise in training camp. I took DJ Chark late in this draft as well. And then we also get Jameson Williams back from injury at some point late in the season. That's going to be a huge lift for Jared Goff, another great deep threat coming back. I like drafting Jameson Williams, by the way. If you're in a league that has an IR slot, you got to be targeting Michael Gallup and Jameson Williams. One of those two guys in your IR slot. Don't leave your draft without one of those two guys, because late in the season, these are the guys that could win fantasy football leagues that you don't even need to waste a roster spot on. You can literally just go get Michael Gallup, Jameson Williams in like round 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 of some season-long drafts, and then you just stash them on the IR until they come back and potentially win your entire fantasy league. That's how good Jameson Williams can be. I think that's how good Michael Gallup could be too. You like J.K. Dobbins as RB2? I don't hate J.K. Dobbins. I'm starting to warm up to him just a tiny bit. He led the league in yards per carry in his rookie season. That being said, he's coming off an injury, and we know Lamar is going to steal a ton of the rushing work as well. But I'm willing to bet on the talent just a little bit with J.K. Dobbins. 6 yards per carry as a rookie, number 1 in the NFL his rookie season. Thoughts on Mike Williams? I'm in the Keenan Allen over Mike Williams camp, and I know, like, I feel like the Mike Williams camp has been gaining some steam. I actually posted a TikTok story about that not that long ago. You look at this draft here, Keenan Allen went 8 picks before Mike Williams. I've seen both go before the other. But I think Keenan Allen, just in season-long leagues, he just has way more consistency. Mike Williams, his role as more of a deep threat leads to inconsistency in fantasy football. Like, we saw him start so hot last season, but then the role really decreased and the volume just wasn't consistent enough. Who should I take with pick 101? I'm taking Christian McCaffrey, 101, but that's a really risky that's like a very high energy move, a very high risk move. If you're comfortable taking big risks, go CMC 1 overall. If you're not comfortable taking risks, I would probably go Cooper Kupp or Justin Jefferson at 1 overall. If you want to go with the safest running back, then you take Jonathan Taylor at 1 overall. Personally, though, I'm trying to win all of my leagues. I'm not scared of previous injury history as much as most people, because I think we're terrible at predicting injuries. And I know Christian McCaffrey has the most league-winning upside of any player in the draft. So I'm just pressing the button on Christian McCaffrey. If it's a PPR league, if it's a half PPR league, I'd probably go Jonathan Taylor. If it's a non-PPR league, I'd probably go Jonathan Taylor. If it's a PPR league and you want to be safe, though, it's Cooper Kupp or Justin Jefferson. Those are my top 4 players in redraft formats, all redraft formats. Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp. I think you can argue those guys literally in any order all day long, but I think all 4 of those guys are in their own tier. Is your app down? It won't let me subscribe, and it just throws an error. Jake, email support@WalterPicks.com if there's any issues, and I'll get back to you like literally immediately after this live, because that's very strange. We'll look into that. Why are you so high on Javonte? I think Javonte could be this year's Jonathan Taylor. Javonte has the efficiency to be this year's Jonathan Taylor. He has the quarterback upgrade to be this year's Jonathan Taylor. Going from Drew Lock to Russell Wilson, one of the biggest leaps we're going to see in offensive efficiency this year is just clearly going to be the Denver Broncos, who's also going to be in so many shootout games, high-scoring games, which is only going to be good for that entire offense. Javonte Williams had 50% of the work in that backfield last season, 50% of the work. That's pretty risky for a guy you're taking in round 2. But I think he could go all the way up to 70% of the backfield this season. And if that happens, I'm not saying it's a definite thing, but I think it is possible. And if that happens, Javonte Williams is going to win fantasy leagues. I think he could be this year's Jonathan Taylor, going in like the back end of round 2, a little bit later than some of these other running backs with like clearly established roles. And it's honestly not that different of a story to Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor didn't have a huge workload last season. He had 60% of the backfield, but he made the most of his touches, and he still, like, by the end of the games, like, he still led the league in carries. He had 19.5 carries a game, but his snap share was only 68%. If Javonte Williams can get to a similar type of workload, he can be as good, I think, as Jonathan Taylor. Why are we drafting possibly in round 2? Why are we drafting possibly in round 2? That's silly. Yeah, I understand that that's silly, but you also have to understand that that possibly is winning leagues. Like, you could have made the same case against Jonathan Taylor last season. And the other guys in round 2, like, I like a lot of guys in round 2. And if you're not going to go with that risk, you're looking at guys like Tyreek Hill, Mark Andrews, Mike Evans, Deebo Samuel. These are all guys that I like as well. I would take Saquon Barclay and Aaron Jones over Javonte Williams. I think Leonard Fournette is a close guy right after Javonte Williams that I like a lot. But if you're not taking risks, you are limiting the upside of your team. You are probably raising the chance, though, you don't come in last. And some people want to optimize for that. I understand that. There's some bad last place punishments out there. I've seen some absolutely abysmal last place punishments. We're actually about to determine the last place punishment in the 32-person fantasy league sometime probably this weekend. And anyone is literally going to be able to vote on what the last place punishment is. I'll read you off what the options are going to be. You can vote for that, though, in our Discord. And anyone can join our Discord for completely free. And it is in the description in the YouTube live if you're looking for that. But we have 5 different. I'll take Brevin Jordan with my last pick, so I do end with 3 tight ends, even though I went with Kyle Pitts. Feeling pretty good. I took Tyquan Thornton in the 17th round. I'm starting to get a little bit of hype for Tyquan Thornton, who's starting to separate in training camp. Tyquan Thornton is one of the fastest players in the league. He ran a 4.28 40-yard dash. That's in the 100th percentile. For reference, that's 0.07 seconds faster than Deshaun Jackson, for context of how fast Tyquan Thornton, the rookie, is for the New England Patriots, who I took in the 17th round of this draft. And the draft is wrapping up here. Let me read off the final roster, and then I am going to join one more draft of Bestball Mania, 3 draft, $25 entry, and then I'll wrap up the live after that. I got Trey Lance and Jared Goff as my 2 quarterbacks, Christian McCaffrey, A.J. Dillon, Tony Pollard, Nyheim Hines, Michael Carter as my 5 running backs, all guys that can catch passes. Love to see that. Tyreek Hill, Juju, Chris Olave, Skye Moore, Julio Jones, DJ Chark, Marvin Jones, and Tyquan Thornton as my receivers. Feel like a little bit thin at receiver, but hopefully one of these guys after the top 2 can hit. That would be huge for me. And then Kyle Pitts, David Njoku, and Brevin Jordan. Love getting Kyle Pitts in round 3. I took him 5 picks ahead of ADP in this draft. Not projected very many points, but I do like this team a lot. All right, we're going to join one Bestball Mania 3 draft, and then we will call it a night. There is 4 spots left in this draft, and then it will start again. You can watch live on YouTube if you want to follow along with that. Why A.J. Dillon? So again, I'll run through the A.J. Dillon thing one more time. A.J. Dillon has standalone running back 2 to running back 3 value on a weekly basis without any injuries on the Packers. He's going to get projected 50% of the backfield work in Green Bay, potentially also 50% of the targets in the backfield in Green Bay. And then also if Aaron Jones gets hurt, he's going to win fantasy leagues. So he has standalone value that can help you out in the sixth round, but he also has league winning upside in the 6th round. And that combination is just absolute money in fantasy. That's why I'm literally drafting him over established starters like Josh Jacobs, like Elijah Mitchell. I'm taking him over. I just took him in a draft over Cam Akers, which honestly, looking back on that might have been a mistake. But I want the guy that has both league winning upside and standalone value. All right, I got the 5th pick in this draft that I'm going to be doing live on YouTube, starting a fresh draft. This is a $25 draft. I'm drafting for a $2 million first place prize. I'll be max entering this tournament. I've done a lot of these on lives, and I think I only have like 15 drafts left. I'm nearing max entered in this Bestball Mania 3. I got to make the most of these last ones to give myself the best chance at this $2 million first place prize. Jamar or Dalvin, full PPR. I'm leaning Jamar, man. I'm leaning Jamar. I think Jamar is like just a step below the top tier, the top 4 players, which I have as CMC, Jonathan Taylor, Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp. Then I think Jamar Chase starts that next tier. So I'm taking him 5th overall. And I have the 5th overall pick in this draft I'm doing right now. This is the order that I want the guys in. CMC, then JT, then Justin Jefferson, then Cooper Kupp, then Jamar Chase. And I will draft them in this exact order in this draft I'm literally about to do for $25 right now. I got 3 of these guys. Love to see that. Diggs or Lamb. I gave a 5-star review in the App Store. Love the content. Letty, thank you so much, man. I really do appreciate that. I lean Diggs over Lamb. It's close, though. I think both guys are in the tier of receivers that could be the number 1 overall receiver. I actually have a futures bet on CeeDee Lamb to lead the league in receiving yards at pretty good odds. But Diggs was, I think, number 2 in the league in air yards last season, maybe even number 1 in air yards per game last season. And yeah, he was number 2 in air yards, 107.5 air yards per game, which is the best volume metric to look at for fantasy. but he only scored 10 touchdowns, and he only averaged, I think, the 9th most fantasy points per game at the receiver position. A historically good season for receivers, but still, I think Stefon Diggs has room to grow as an asset in fantasy. So yeah, I'm in on Diggs a little bit more than I am on CD, but I like both guys at the end of the first round. I really do like having a pick at the end of the first round. Fifth pick is not so great because I'm going to end up going with Jamar Chase with this 5th overall pick, which I do like. But now I won't pick for a while, and I'll probably miss on like all the top-end talent in the beginning part of the second round. Mike Williams versus Godwin. Yeah, I would lean a healthy Godwin over Mike Williams, but he's not healthy right now. So I think Mike Williams is getting drafted over Chris Godwin. Thoughts on Tyreek? I don't think he's going to have a good year in Miami. Jalen Waddle, Mike Gesicki, Myles Gaskin feel like it takes away targets until it isn't a Patty Mahomes. Well, first off, I would completely remove Myles Gaskin from this equation. I don't think Myles Gaskin is going to factor in too much for the Dolphins this season. I think both Chase Edmonds and Raheem Mostert will probably play ahead of him. But your point stands. There is some added risk to Tyreek Hill this season. There's, to a smaller extent, some added risk to Devante Adams this season too. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to knock Devante Adams. I'm taking Devante Adams with literally the 13th overall pick, first pick in the second round. I'm still pressing the button on Devante Adams. But there is added risk with Devante Adams. He's downgrading from back-to-back MVP Aaron Rodgers to Derek Carr. And Derek Carr's okay. He's pretty good. He's not Aaron Rodgers. You can say a pretty similar story about Tyreek Hill, even more so, going from Patrick Mahomes to Tua. And I'm actually a guy that I think Tua's pretty good. I think he's more accurate than people give him credit for. But he's not Patrick Mahomes. And he's also competing against Jalen Waddle. There is added risk for Tyreek Hill. I still think he's going to have some absolutely monster weeks. I still think he's a pretty good bet to finish top 5 in receiving yards per game in the NFL. And he's not going as a top 5 receiver. But I don't think he's going to score as many touchdowns as he scored. He has scored 24 touchdowns over the last 2 seasons. There's just no way Tyreek Hill is scoring that many touchdowns with the Miami Dolphins. So I'm still in on Tyreek, though, in like end of round 2. I'm not fading Tyreek, but I do think there's added risk with Tyreek and Davante Adams to a lesser extent this season because they're downgrading quarterbacks. Again, I think of all years that I've been playing fantasy, of all years, this has been the most chaotic offseason. I think this is going to be one of the seasons where people who do their research ahead of time and are up to date with the NFL news ahead of their drafts are going to win the most in their fantasy leagues. We have so many quarterback changes, so many massive upgrades. We have Judy and Sutton going from Drew Lock to Russell Wilson. I mean, it's just an absolutely asinine jump going from a bottom 5 quarterback in the league to a top 10 quarterback in the league. We have Juju Smith-Schuster going from Big Ben in his worst statistical career, where he was last in the league in his average air yards per attempt, to Patrick Mahomes in the prime of his career. But we also have Davante Adams and Tyreek Hill downgrading quarterbacks this season, 2 top wide receivers in the league over the last few years. I mean, there's so much to keep up with this season that if you aren't doing your research now, which obviously all of you are, and everyone that tunes into my streams, I mean, it's just on average, these are very well-versed fantasy players. But there's going to be a lot of people just left in the dust, I think, this season if they aren't up to date. Trade thought: Zeke and Marquise Brown for Javonte, 5-star review. Alan, thanks for the 5-star review in the App Store. I really do appreciate that for the WalterPicks app. I'd probably just stick with Zeke and Marquise Brown, especially if they're both starting for you. I think you're probably giving up a little bit too much value for Javonte, though Javonte is the best player in the trade, especially just based on average draft position. You also can't analyze any trade for completely free now in the WalterPicks app. And as many trades as you want to analyze in the WalterPicks app now, you can analyze. You won't see some of the specific player values if you aren't a premium subscriber, but you can analyze as many trades as you want now, which I'm very excited about for this season. Please let me get Saquon Barclay with his next pick. That would be absolutely amazing. He's sliding really far in this draft. His average draft position is 15. If I could get him with the 20th pick, I would feel really good about that. If not, I'm going to go with Javonte Williams. Saquon Barkley slides. We'd love to see it. We absolutely love to see it. So we start this draft with Jamar Chase and Saquon Barkley. I feel pretty good about that. Good about that. Again, you can watch this draft live on YouTube. You can literally see the draft board live as it's happening, pick by pick. This is a $25 draft for a $2 million first place prize over on Underdog Fantasy. And TikTok they won't give me the ability to share my screen. So you got to come to the YouTube live. Link is in the TikTok bio to see the draft board. I start at the 5th overall pick, Jamar Chase, then Saquon Barkley. Javonte Williams did go 2 picks later, but I do have Saquon ahead of Javonte Williams just in terms of pure ceiling. And I think his role is just more defined than Javonte Williams is. So I like the start a lot that I got off to here. Get back to some of the more of the comments. Diggs or Adams at pick 10 in a PPR. I have Diggs slightly ahead of Adams. He went 1 pick before Adams in the draft I'm doing right now for what that's worth. but they're really close, man. They're really close. Worth keeping Josh Allen in the 5th. Yeah, Jake, do that, man. Do that. Josh Allen in the 5th is an absolute steal. He's going in the 3rd round. He's going to go in this 3rd round that I'm in right now. I'll even probably consider him in like the middle of the 3rd round. I don't love being the first guy to take a QB, but getting Josh Allen in round 5, Josh Allen is going to probably average the most fantasy points per game across all positions this year. He's in his own tier at the quarterback position, his complete own tier, because he has the rushing ceiling, but he also has the passing ceiling, unlike any other quarterback in the league. And after the way the Pat season ended too, I just had that game stuck in my head where the Bills scored touchdown, back-to-back touchdown, back-to-back touchdown. It was crazy. 6 or 7 straight touchdowns. That's what the Bills are capable of. That's what Josh Allen's capable of. He's unlike any other quarterback in fantasy. So yeah, I'm in on Josh Allen in round 5. I think you got to take Eckler personally. Yeah, I think there's a good argument for a lot of ways to go with the 5th overall pick after the 4 that went in this draft went. I am on the clock right now, so I'll get back to that comment in a second. Kyle Pitts still on the board. I'm gonna pull the trigger on Kyle Pitts in round 3. I've been pretty heavy on Kyle Pitts in the Bestball Mania 3. I'm going to continue that trend because I like having elite wide receivers being able to play in my tight end slot. And that's exactly what you're getting with Kyle Pitts and the type of player that he's going to be in the NFL. Again, I just want to be a year early, not a year late. I'd much rather be a year early than a year late on Kyle Pitts. I'm telling you, it's only a matter of time until Kyle Pitts is the number 1 overall tight end in fantasy. He checks literally every single box. Draft capital, he's the earliest drafted tight end that anyone has seen in their current lifetimes. He went with a 4th overall pick just a year ago. Year 1 production. He had arguably the best rookie tight end season of all time. No tight end has ever averaged 60 yards per game in their rookie season since the 1960s. And we don't see rookie tight ends average 60 yards a game like Kyle Pitts did. And then on top of that, he only scored 1 touchdown as a rookie, so he didn't have the best fantasy season. So people don't even realize how good Kyle Pitts is in the fantasy football world because they look at the numbers and they see that, oh, Kyle Pitts, he was 11th in fantasy points per game last year. Why are people taking him in the 3rd round? That's absolutely crazy. But when you really dive into the numbers, he was 2nd in air yards per game. The volume is there for Kyle Pitts. The talent is there for Kyle Pitts. The draft capital is there for Kyle Pitts. And then you get to concerns about the quarterback. Oh, Sam, what about Marcus Mariota? I'm nervous about Marcus Mariota. Well, Marcus Mariota already sustained top 5 tight end play in his first few years in the league with Delanie Walker a very long time ago. And Delanie Walker is not as good as Kyle Pitts. So yeah, I'm in on Kyle Pitts in round 3. If I didn't make that clear, JT or CMC, I'm in the CMC camp now. I've officially jumped over into the CMC over JT camp, and I knew this was coming as we got closer to true fantasy football draft season. But most people are going to tell you JT, and it's hard to argue. Like you can really argue all day, all night on both sides. I just personally think Christian McCaffrey has by far the highest ceiling, the biggest league-winning upside of any player in fantasy. He does have some increased injury risk, but running backs in general have a ton of injury risk. Jonathan Taylor has a lot of injury risk. Every running back you're taking in every round has a lot of injury risk. And that's why I'm still willing to pull the trigger on Christian McCaffrey at 1 overall, at 2 overall, at 3 overall, at 4 overall, because he has insane upside. The upside, the reward outweighs the risk. If I go running back first 2 rounds, I know Judy and Sutton are very good wide receivers to pick, but who are some other sleeper wide receivers that you think can come alive this year? Yeah, I like Allen Robinson a lot too. He just got picked in the draft I'm doing right now. He's going earlier and earlier and earlier in these drafts. He just got picked in the 4th round of this draft. That's absolutely insane how early he's getting picked. I do like Juju a lot too. Juju does look like he's available still in the draft I'm doing right now. Marquise Brown is a guy that is going probably a little later in season-long leagues that I think could have a really big first 6 weeks of the season with DeAndre Hopkins suspended. But I don't know exactly what his role is going to look like and how consistent it's going to be when he comes back from suspension. Breece Hall is a guy I'm going to take. I'm going to take Breece Hall. And there's been a lot of negativity around Breece Hall and the Jets. I know Mekhi Becton went down. Mekhi Becton went down. Zach Wilson obviously went down. But I'm willing to bet on the talent with Breece Hall. I actually literally just took Michael Carter in the last draft. And as I did that, I was saying I've drafted a lot of Breece Hall so far in best ball. And I'm not going to stop. As much negativity is going to come about Breece Hall and the Jets just in general, the talent is just so there for Breece Hall. He's the clear number 1 running back in this draft class. He is a Saquon Barclay clone with none of the injury risk. He had 24 consecutive games with a touchdown in college football. Think about how crazy that is. 24 consecutive games. That is the all-time record of most games in a row with a touchdown in college football history. 24 straight games. And a lot of those games came against top 15, top 20 college football programs. Breece Hall is just an absolute star with the ball in his hands. As bad as the Jets are going to be, I think we could see a Saquon Barkley type rookie season out of Breece Hall. You're getting him in the 4th round. So I'm pulling the trigger on Breece Hall. I have him just a little bit behind Travis Etienne, who's going like very early 4th round. He was picked at the 2nd pick of the 4th round in this draft I'm doing right now. I got Breece Hall with the 8th pick of the 4th round. So I like the value I'm getting there in comparison. How do you feel about James Conner? And who are some guys you would take him over? I'm starting to warm up to James Conner a lot. James Conner went in the last pick of the 3rd round in this draft. I probably would take Nick Chubb over him and Leonard Fournette. All the running backs I think that went before James Conner, I would take before him. I would take Travis Etienne maybe 1 pick before James Conner 2. I think there's a tiny bit more receiving upside. But what did James Conner need to show us for us to believe in him? I mean, just look at his last season, and then Chase Edmonds leaves, and he's replaced with guys that I think are much worse than Chase Edmonds. Last year, James Conner was 7th in fantasy points per game. He's going well after the top 7 running backs, and he's arguably in a better situation this year than he was last year. But we also know James Conner has dealt with some injuries in the past, and he is getting up there a tiny bit in age, age 27 season. So maybe 1 year before we need to actually worry. I do like James Conner, though. I think he has really, really high touchdown ceiling. I think he's sort of the end of the tier of running backs. I would say the tier honestly ends probably at Zeke or Breece Hall, depending on how you feel about the talent of Breece Hall. That's probably the end of running back tier in drafts right now. So I do like sort of all the guys before that tier ends, because it gets really bleak really fast. Like, just look at the running backs left. This is all just such dumpster fire situation. I'm going to go with, I want Brandon Cooks and Breece Hall. How much time do I have? 16 seconds. I want Brandon Cooks and Rashad Bateman. I meant to say. I have been taking Rashad Bateman a lot, though, so I'm actually going to go with Brandon Cooks with this draft. And I will try to get Davis Mills super late in the draft as well to complete that stack, maybe Nico Collins as well. And I do look at the Week 17 schedule for the best ball draft, too, because you want to be stacking in Week 17. So if I look at my current roster, and I'll just look through who the Texans are playing in the last 3 weeks of the season and try to stack, because that I'm competing for a $2 million first place prize, and that prize is determined in Week 17. So you want to be optimizing your team for Week 17, but also Week 16 and Week 15 are round single elimination tournament style weeks. So you also want to stack your team for those weeks too. In Week 17, the Houston Texans play the Jaguars. And when I started analyzing Week 17, 16, 15 schedules, which is like the fantasy playoffs, it's huge for these best ball drafts I'm doing. Guys, the Texans have low-key one of the best fantasy playoff schedules out there. They play the Jaguars in Week 17. In Week 16, the Houston Texans play the Tennessee Titans. And then in Week 15, the Houston Texans play the Kansas City Chiefs. So they have a shootout against the Kansas City Chiefs. Then they play the Tennessee Titans, whose defense I don't expect to be all too good this season. And then they play the Jaguars. I mean, I could see Davis Mills, Brandon Cooks cooking in those final 3 weeks of the season. Absolutely, there's a scenario where that happens. I'm going to be back on the clock in, I think, 10 picks or so. So let's get to some comments here. What do you think about Walker versus Penny? Andrew Sands, what's going on, man? Good to see you in the YouTube Live. Falcons creator. That was a fun drafting right next to you. Thank you for giving me CMC in that last draft, by the way, because I literally have a notes above me on TikTok Live right now saying I want CMC in the first round. But what do you think about Walker versus Penny? Yeah, I've been in on Kenneth Walker pretty hard this offseason. I have also taken some stabs on Rashad Penny because I think both guys are extremely efficient runners. I think both guys are really, really talented. I mean, we saw it already in the NFL from Penny, who was the most efficient running back in the last 6 weeks of last season. But we also have seen it from Kenneth Walker throughout his entire college career, where he was an absolute stud and is just like an absolute menace on the ground. And there's already positive reports about him in the receiving role out of the backfield. He is 98th percentile speed, Kenneth Walker, like 96th percentile size adjusted speed. The dude's an absolute tank. And I would not ignore the talent of Kenneth Walker. But he is getting surgery, and he is injured now. And Rashad Penny is pretty clearly the number one guy heading into the season. I'm willing still to take stabs on both, but Penny's certainly the safer bet at this moment in time. But I wouldn't be surprised either way if one of them ends up breaking out. And I do think Rashad Penny has arguably the highest injury risk of any running back in the entire fantasy football draft. Like, he's been injured basically his entire career. I've been in on Rashad Penny's talent for a long time. I didn't even think there was ever going to be a stretch where he was healthy for 6 weeks. That's how bad it's been health-wise for Rashad Penny throughout his career so far. So I'm in on him, but the second he starts picking up injuries, and he literally just had a small groin injury, I start to get very, very nervous about Rashad Penny. What if Andrews is there in 3? You take Andrews in 3. That actually happened to me in my first high-stakes draft. I went Christian McCaffrey at 4th overall in my first high-stakes draft because people draft scared. He went 4th overall in a PPR league. And then in the second round, I went Deebo Samuel. I'm a little nervous about Deebo Samuel, but he was also the number one most efficient receiver in the league last season. I'm back on the clock. I want to go Trey Lance again. I'm going to do it. I'm going to go Trey Lance. We'll see if I can snag Ayuka the Bazooka for the stack with my next pick. But I do take Trey Lance in the 6th round of this draft. I took him in the last draft as well. Hopefully grab Davis Mills as my second QB. But yeah, in the 3rd round, Andrews was still sitting there for me. In my first high-stakes draft, I went CMC, Deebo Samuel, and then Mark Andrews. And I felt pretty good about that. Again, Mark Andrews led the league in targets per game, led the league in receiving yards per game, led all tight ends in fantasy points per game. That's just tight ends, not the league, just tight ends. Targets per game, yards per game, fantasy points per game. He was the only tight end to rank top 6 in a league in receiving yards per game. All the other top 6 were receivers. There was no other tight end in the top 14. Mark Andrews could easily outscore all tight ends this season. It just won't be that surprising. They also lost Hollywood Brown this offseason and basically replaced him with absolutely nothing. There's a huge role for Mark Andrews. Yeah, I'm in on Mark Andrews round 3. I have Mark Andrews ranked certainly above of Kyle Pitts, but usually Mark Andrews is going like middle of round 2. And I got Kyle Pitts in the middle of round 3 in the draft I'm doing right now. I don't think Kyle Pitts is quite in that same tier as Mark Andrews, but I also don't think it's going to be very long, and it literally could be this season that he joins that tier. And I want to be a year early, not a year late on Kyle Pitts, because it's only a matter of time till he's in that same exact tier of Mark Andrews and Travis Kelsey. Do I trade Edmonds and Garrett Wilson for Rashad Penny? No, I would not do that trade. Pitts or Kelsey will be 1 and 2. I absolutely love that take from you. I really hope you're right. There's not a single player I've drafted more in fantasy this offseason in best ball drafts than Kyle Pitts in the 3rd round. Davis Mills or Matt Ryan? Matt Ryan, I think, is getting drafted well ahead of Davis Mills, but I low-key like Mills, man. I think Mills is really slept on. I feel like Mills can be – oh, no, I just lost the tab. One sec. I think Mills can be like a Dak Prescott type of guy. I think that's Mills' ceiling. I think he could come out of nowhere as sort of this late-round quarterback that shows like signs of promise in his rookie season, and he turns into a starting caliber quarterback. He's probably not going to be as good as Dak Prescott, but I think he could be a pretty reasonable starter in the NFL. I'm back on the clock. I really do not like what I'm looking at here, and I'm actually going to go with Christian Kirk over all of these guys. I took him over Amari Cooper, 5 picks ahead of ADP, though I do like being a little ahead of ADP on Christian Kirk, who I think is going to be the clear number 1 wide receiver for the Jaguars on a team that I think could finish top 10 in pass attempts this season. They were top 10 in pass attempts last season, and their defense is better, but still pretty bad for the Jaguars. So I do expect a lot of passes. Kittle or Waller, only one right answer. I feel like I've been fading Brian, Raiders.WalterPicks in the chat, in the TikTok live. I feel like there's a few guys that I've sort of unintentionally faded in a lot of the best ball drafts that I've been doing this offseason. And Darren Waller and George Kittle are 2 of them, because my tight end strategy has sort of ignored them. My tight end strategy has basically been Kelsey end of round 1, Andrews middle to late round 2, Pitts early to middle round 3, Schultz in like round 6, or just punt the position entirely. I'm basically skipping over the Kittle Waller tier because I think at least one of those guys is going to disappoint. I don't think they're going to be as consistent as the guys in that top tier. I think they could see similar consistency, maybe even worse than Dalton Schultz, because of Trey Lance and the 49ers being so run heavy. Deebo Samuel, Ayuk, I think will be very involved. I would take Waller over Kittle, by the way. I think he has a chance at more touchdowns than Kittle. I think Kittle is the better overall tight end, though, if we're just talking pure NFL terms. But I'm nervous for Darren Waller, man. I saw a good report about him today, which I'm sure is going to boost his ADP up just a tiny bit. But that Derek Carr kept looking for him in the red zone. But you're literally adding the number 1 receiving red zone threat in the league to your team. Like, it's hard to see Darren Waller getting more red zone work once Devante Adams is added. Obviously, it's possible that we see Josh McDaniels try to use him in that Gronk role. But outside of that 16 target week 1 game, which really like inflates a lot of Darren Waller's numbers, it was 19 targets, I think. 19 targets he had in week 1, but he didn't go over 10 in most other games last season. He had only 2 other games last season over 10 targets. So you're really relying on the touchdowns for him. He only had 2 games over 100 yards last year. I think Kyle Pitts, Mark Andrews, Kelsey have a lot higher ceiling than him. So I'm a little out on Darren Waller. I'm a little out on George Kittle at their current cost. I would much rather get one of those top guys or just punt the position completely. But I would take Darren Waller over George Kittle to answer your question the correct way. I'll be back on the clock in 2 picks. I have only 2 running backs still, which is definitely very sketch. So I should probably take a 3rd running back with my next pick. Chase Edmonds is still on the board. Rashad Penny is still on the board. Kareem Hunt. Miles Sanders is not a guy that I really like very much, even though I do think he's very talented. I will go with Chase Edmonds as my 3rd running back. I'll probably look for a 4th. I'll strongly consider Robert Woods as well. Robert Woods has been one of my most drafted guys this whole offseason, and that's starting to shape up better and better and better as the days go along. It seems like Robert Woods is pretty locked into the top wide receiver role for the Tennessee Titans. And like you look at what Robert Woods was doing before his injury last season, gives you a lot of optimism for what Allen Robinson could do in a better situation this season. I think Allen Robinson's median case is basically what Robert Woods did last season. That was 15.2 fantasy points per game. That's solid wide receiver 2 numbers. I think we could see closer to 12, 13 fantasy points per game from Robert Woods this season, which is absolutely going to pay off in the 8th, 9th, 10th round where you're getting him. Thoughts on AK-41 with his potential suspension? Yeah, everything that's out there right now is saying that he's not going to get suspended. It's looking less and less likely that he's going to get suspended. I do think it's important, though, to just give you the context of the situation, give you the information. You can make your own decisions with what you want to do about that. I'll let you know how I'm approaching the situation. But there is a situation that you should be aware of. Alvin Kamara, night of the Pro Bowl, he physically assaults someone. It is on camera. There is a video of the assault. He's on trial for that now, but the trial got pushed till after the season, which is why people aren't worried about him getting suspended. That being said, the video is not public. It's a private video being used in the case. In the past, we have seen videos leak to the public. This one hasn't. If it does, he's going to get suspended. The public backlash will not be good. The video is not good. I haven't seen it, but based on what we've heard about the video and what we've heard about the situation, it's absolutely not going to be a good video. But it's probably not going to get leaked. It hasn't got leaked yet. It's been 6 months. So I'm not too worried about it. I'm still drafting him in the second round. I don't think he's going to get suspended this season. But again, do with that information what you will. When he was drafted in my high stakes league in the second round just a few weeks ago, everyone in the draft was saying, we're just waiting for that 3 a.m. text at some point during the season saying the video leaked. And that definitely could happen. The video leaks, 3 a.m. text, and boom, your fantasy season's done if you draft Alvin Kamara. There's a small chance. There's a small chance of that happening. Again, I don't think that's going to happen. I'm drafting Alvin Kamara in the second round. But it is a possibility that I think you should be aware of if you are drafting Alvin Kamara. All right, I'm actually going to take Robert Woods over Kareem Hunt. I'm going to get aggressive with this Bestball Mania team, drafting my 4th receiver before my 4th running back. Betting pretty heavy on these 3 running backs I have. Definitely a little bit risky, but I do really like the value of Robert Woods in round 9. Getting a wide receiver 1 in round 9 is just something that I'm all about. George Pickens goes 3 picks before Robert Woods. I mean, it's getting a little out of hand, guys. I get it. The hype around George Pickens is real. He's really talented, but he's at best wide receiver 2, and at worst wide receiver 3 or 4 on the Steelers. What type of fantasy consistency are we going to see out of George Pickens? There's a world George Pickens scores 10 touchdowns this season, and he still wouldn't return value at his round 9 cost because he's probably not even going to average 50 yards a game. So I think I'm out on George Pickens if he's going to go in round 9. I am in on the general talent for George Pickens. And as a Pats fan, because George Pickens was picked just a few picks after the Patriots took Saquon Thornton, we just know George Pickens is going to be good. This is how it goes for the Pats. They took N'Keal Harry over A.J. Brown, over DK Metcalf, over Deebo Samuel, and now we're going to see the similar thing with Tyquan Thornton. I actually like Tyquan Thornton. I actually liked N'Keal Harry, but George Pickens is probably really good. He would have been a first-round pick had he not gotten hurt in college. But the receivers on the Steelers are pretty good. The offense is probably not going to be very good with Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett behind a pretty bad offensive line. So I'm not really sure how you could justify taking George Pickens in round 9 ahead of Robert Woods. This was my draft exactly. That's what I'm talking about, man. Get ready for a fun season because this is pretty similar to how a lot of my drafts have gone too. Love getting Christian McCaffrey 4th overall like I did in my high stakes league. Thoughts on A.J. Brown this year? Yeah, I've been staying up late some nights just thinking about whether I should be in or out on A.J. Brown in fantasy football. I think he's one of the toughest decisions for fantasy managers in drafts this season because on one end, if you follow the NFL closely and you are deep diving into the analytics like I do, you know that A.J. Brown is a top 10 talented wide receiver in the NFL. He is absolutely tremendously talented. He's been top 10 in yards per route run in almost every year of his career. I think maybe every single season of his career. He's only gotten better in the NFL. He was on pace for 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons. Last year, he was 7th in the league in yards per route run. In 2020, he was 2nd in the league in yards per route run. And in 2019, as a rookie, he was 2nd in the league in yards per route run. He's been top 10 efficiency per route in the NFL since he joined the league. But he's on a team that ran the ball a lot last season. And he's probably maybe upgrading at quarterback, but not super clearly. I do think Jalen Hurts can take a step forward as a passer. But I do think the volume is going to be there, maybe even more so than it was for the Titans on the Eagles, because we know that I'm about to be on the clock again. I don't have a great stack here. I'm actually going to go with Darrell Henderson as my 4th running back. Even though I don't really love passing on Derek Carr where I'm passing up on him, I am going to go Darrell Henderson instead. Looking at this ADP right now, too, in this draft, I'm feeling pretty bad about taking Derek Carr over Trey Lance in the Superflex League. He's literally going 4 or 5 rounds after Trey Lance in this draft right now. So that's not a good sign for my Superflex team. I have picked 3. Who should I pick? Yeah, you're looking for Justin Jefferson or Cooper Kupp. I would go with Christian McCaffrey if he's there. If not, go with Justin Jefferson. If not, go with Cooper Kupp. You're going to be in an absolutely amazing spot if you do that. My top 4 players in fantasy are Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp. I think those 4 guys are in their own tier. So anytime you can get those guys, I think you should be doing it. All right, I'm 5 picks away. I do need another running back. Is Nyheim Hines still there? He's not. Kenneth Gainwell still there. I do like taking some stabs on him late in drafts. Sounds like he's really carving out a pretty valuable role for the Eagles. Kenneth Gainwell, he was a very productive receiver in college. He didn't really flash that much as a rookie, though he did show some ability in the passing game. He was a 92nd percentile receiver in college. He was 16th in the league in target share last season. Like, he didn't really pop in efficiency, but the reports out of camp have been pretty strong for Kenneth Gainwell. He's still only 23 years old, and the reports from Miles Sanders have been pretty awful. So I don't hate taking some stabs on Kenneth Gainwell, which is exactly what I'm going to do here, taking him ahead of Isaiah Spiller, taking him ahead of Rashad White, who are 2 rookies that I do like, but it feels like right now they have a little bit more distance to touches than Kenneth Gainwell has. And with the running backs I've drafted right now, I just got to lock in some touches. Kenneth Gainwell is actually, I think, younger than Rashad White. Let's see. Rashad White's 23.6 years old. Kenneth Gainwell, Kenneth Gainwell is younger than Rashad White. He might be younger than Isaiah Spiller, too. Even though he already has, he's not younger than Isaiah Spiller. Isaiah Spiller is 21 years old. He's extremely young. In the reports out of camp about him haven't been like super, super optimistic, but there was some early optimism about Isaiah Spiller. But Austin Eckler is just clearly locked into the top role there that I prefer going with Kenneth Gainwell over Isaiah Spiller. Devante, Adams, or Diggs. I lean Diggs over Adams. Who should I target? I picked 14. Yeah, so if you just check out my last 2 TikTok videos, I literally went in order of how I think the first 2 rounds should go. I'll be posting round 3, I think, tomorrow. That's for a PPR league. A half PPR league, you bump up the running backs a little bit. In a non-PPR league, bump up the running backs like a decent amount. Running backs become more valuable the less receptions matter because they're running more, they're catching less. And also, I'd probably push JT ahead of CMC in a half PPR or non-PPR format, because PPR is really where Christian McCaffrey makes the most sense, because he scores so many points just through receptions. He was a top 10 wide receiver in his best season without his rushing stats. That's the insane upside you're getting with Christian McCaffrey. That's why I'm not drafting scared, and I'm pulling the trigger on him with any of the top 3 picks. Thoughts on Deontay? Got him at wide receiver 2 next to Jefferson. Yeah, Deontay Johnson's a super interesting guy this year. He might end up making my do not draft list, and it has nothing to do with the talent of Deontay Johnson and more to do with I'm just a little concerned about how the shift from Big Ben to Mitch Trubisky could affect the target shares in that offense, because Deontay Johnson's game fit perfectly with what Big Ben was doing at the end of his career, which was just not throwing the ball far at all. And when that changes, I think it could be more George Pickens and Chase Claypool than we're used to in recent past. That being said, Deontay Johnson has been the clear wide receiver 1 for that team. Targets are, to a big extent, earned, not given, and the talent has earned him a lot of targets over the past few years. So it would be naive to think that this is just going to change all of a sudden. And there's also an argument that Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett, as bad as they might be, are pretty clearly still better than last year Big Ben. And that could actually be a good thing for Deontay Johnson. So I don't hate him as wide receiver 2, but I also, at cost, I prefer Chase Claypool. I prefer George Pickens over Deontay Johnson, because I just think we could see the target shares shake up a little bit more than people are expecting there. I feel similarly about the 49ers. I'm a little bit nervous about Deebo Samuel. I still drafted him in the 2nd round because the talent is just undeniably there. He was the most efficient wide receiver in yards per touch and yards per reception last season. But I'm not sure his game will mesh as well with Trey Lance as Brandon Ayuk's game will mesh with Trey Lance, or at least maybe there's less target share that goes to Deebo Samuel. He might still lead the team in receiving, but maybe not by quite as big of a margin. I think that's just possible. With the quarterback shift and with quarterback preferences, things can shift. It's not saying that Trey Lance is worse than Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm not saying Mitch Trubisky is worse than Big Ben, but their preferences and their play style are much different than their predecessors. And I think that could have a pretty big impact on how target shares shake out, and I think it adds risk to those guys. I also think you could say that Davante Adams and Tyreek Hill have a slightly bigger risk than usual this fantasy season. I'm not saying don't draft those guys. I'm still taking Davante Adams with the first pick of the 2nd round. But I am a little nervous that the downgrade from Aaron Rodgers to Derek Carr might not be the best thing for Davante Adams. We really liking how this draft is shaking out right now. I have 6 wide receivers now. I like all 6 of the receivers that I have. Michael Gallup's been one of my most drafted guys because, again, I'm thinking about week 17, and Michael Gallup's going to be back by week 17, and he could be there to win me $2 million. I also have some pretty good stacking going on. Week 17, the Cowboys play the Titans. I have Michael Gallup versus Robert Woods in that game. I mentioned earlier the Texans, they play the Jaguars. Brandon Cooks, Christian Kirk stacked against each other. You absolutely love to see that. Week 17 stack as well. And I should be able to snag, hopefully, Davis Mills late in this draft as my second QB. I don't think there's a bye week situation there, and maybe even snag a few more of his targets, like Brevin Jordan, like Nico Collins late in this draft. Nico Collins has been one of my favorite late round guys. Let's talk last round picks, by the way. One of my favorite things in fantasy is last round picks. Last year, I nailed my last round pick. It was all Cordell Patterson for me. Last round, every single time, Cordell Patterson in the last round. And that ended up hitting. The year before that, I think I completely whiffed on my last round pick, which is fine because it's your last round pick. So you got to just swing for the fences in the last round. And nothing's more fun than hitting on your last round pick in fantasy. Because I mean, like everyone just expects the last round guy to be on waivers in a few weeks anyway. This year, I do like Nico Collins a lot near the last round. I also like Evan Ingram a lot near the last round. If you end up punting the tight end position, which I think you should do if you don't get a top 3 tight end and you don't get Dalton Schultz, I'm fine punting the tight end position. Evan Ingram, I think, will be just as good as some of these guys going in the middle rounds. I won't be surprised if Evan Ingram's better than Irv Smith. Won't be surprised if Evan Ingram's better than Cole Kmet. I won't be that surprised even if he's better than Zach Ertz. Obviously, I'm not guaranteeing that he's going to be better than these guys. Evan Ingram has been a bust for, 5 consecutive fantasy seasons in a row now, but he is in a better situation on a team that should throw a lot this season without very many top-end weapons outside of Christian Kirk. It's going to be Zay Jones, Marvin Jones, and Laviska Shenault and Travis Etienne. I think Evan Ingram could have some good weeks. He will be tougher to trust though in season long than in best ball for sure. All right, I'm about to be back on the clock. I will take Nico Collins with his next pick if he's there, so I can complete the mega stack with Davis Mills. Absolutely love to see Nico Collins sliding to me in the 14th round. Again, 14th round is where I'm getting Nico Collins in the 14th round of a live draft on YouTube right now. You can watch live on YouTube. Link is in the TikTok bio. If you are watching live on TikTok, you can literally see the draft pick by pick as I'm doing. It's a $25 Bestball Mania 3 draft with a $2 million first place prize that I'm shooting for right now. And I really like how this team's coming together. Thoughts on Fournette? Yeah, I'm starting to warm up to Fournette in the end of the round 2. I think he was, third in fantasy points per game or something crazy like that last season at the running back position. And it feels like the Leonard Fournette showing up to camp overweight thing has seeped in to his average draft position even deep into August when we know that's just not the case for him anymore. He was third. He had the third most targets at the running back position last season, third most red zone touches, third most fantasy points per game. These things are all correlated and is a good sign for Leonard Fournette. They did draft Rashad White, who was arguably the best receiving back in the league. Yarsman, man, how's it going? It's going great, man. Yarsman, we are in peak fantasy football draft season. This is literally my favorite time of year. This is my Christmas time of year for those of you that love Christmas. This is my holiday. This is my holiday season. We have 3 weeks. We are 3 weeks away tomorrow from the very first football game. This is when fantasy football seasons, the championship ride starts now, man. It starts now. I'm super pumped. I've already had one of my high stakes drafts. I'm 2 weeks away from most of my high stakes drafts at the very end of preseason. So I'm pumped, man. What about Zeke and Marquise Brown for Saquon? I would probably do that one. And additionally, what are your thoughts on Zeke this year? Yeah, I'm sort of part of me is rooting against Zeke because I have so much. I should probably take Njoku over Evan Ingram. I still need 3 tight ends, so I'm gonna go Njoku instead. I don't need 3 tight ends, but I honestly might end up going 3 quarterbacks on this team. So maybe I won't end up with Evan Ingram on the squad. I just took David Njoku though in the 15th round. I got 3 picks left in this draft. Can I see your first couple picks? Yeah, if you come to the YouTube live, link is in the TikTok bio. I'm showing the draft board right now. I started this draft. I had the 5th overall pick. I went with Jamar Chase, 5th overall. I followed it up with Saquon in round 2, Kyle Pitts in round 3, Breece Hall in round 4, Brandon Cooks in round 5, Trey Lance in round 6, Christian Kirk in round 7, Chase Edmonds round 8, Robert Woods round 9, Darrell Henderson, Kenneth Gainwell in round 10, 11 to wrap up my running back group. I have honestly a pretty sketchy group of running backs, but again, all my running backs can catch passes, and that's exactly what I want in fantasy football. Saquon, Breece Hall, Chase Edmonds, Darrell Henderson, Kenneth Gainwell. And then I go 3 straight vertical receivers, Michael Gallup, DJ Chark, Nico Collins. Absolutely love where I'm getting those guys. I think DJ Chark, guys, is going to really surprise a lot of people at the beginning part of this season. We haven't seen him much, I don't think, on Hard Knocks yet. I just finished that second episode earlier today. But with Jameson Williams out, and Jameson Williams is a guy I've been drafting too late in these best ball drafts. And in season-long drafts, if you have an IR spot, you should be drafting Michael Gallup and or Jameson Williams, because these guys are going to come back later in the season off of injury and be very, very good for your fantasy teams. But Jameson Williams is, I think, a much longer timeline than Michael Gallup. I think Michael Gallup will be back within the first 2 to 6 weeks of the season. I don't think we see Jameson Williams for probably the first 2 months of the season. And that's going to be huge for DJ Chark, who's going to be the primary vertical receiver for the Detroit Lions, alongside Among Us St. Brown, who I think will continue to ball as well. So I do like where I got DJ Chark a lot. I don't think he'll be super relevant in season-long leagues, but he could have some spike weeks for you in a pinch. Thoughts on Alvin Kamara? Yeah, I'm drafting him in the second round. I'm still like a tiny bit worried about the suspension because there is a video, and if the video leaks, I think he's going to get suspended. But I think that's extremely unlikely. And at this point, I'm drafting him because he probably would be a first-round pick if there was no suspension concerns. I took Kelsey as my first pick. I had 8th in a 15-man. I don't hate it at all. Would pick 15 be good value? For who are we talking about? Pick 15, good value for who? What team Njoku on? I'm out. Njoku's on the Browns. What team is Njoku on? I'm out. Thanks for tuning in. David Njoku's on the Browns. He's going to be the every down tight end for the Browns this season. The Browns let Austin Hooper go. He's on the Tennessee Titans now. Njoku has been a guy that I've been excited about in the NFL, but he has never really had the opportunity to shine. He just got a big contract extension. He's only 26 years old. He was a first-round pick. He's an 80th percentile athlete, and he's supposedly going to see at least 80% of the snaps in an offense that lacks receiving weapons. They are a run-first team, though, so I don't think Njoku is going to be like consistent by any means, but I did already draft Kyle Pitts on this team, so I don't need Njoku to be super consistent. I just need a couple big games out of David Njoku for this best ball roster to win. Do these 6 win a championship? Yeah, I feel pretty good about these 6. You're getting 4 good running backs. Like, you probably don't even need to draft another running back if you start like this. And again, this isn't like, I've never started a draft like this. It's very rare I would get all 6 of these guys if you're watching live on TikTok and only start with only one receiver in the first 6 rounds. But if there's one position I feel confident about drafting later in the draft, it's receiver. It's not running back. It's not, we're going to reach for Davis Mills, complete this mega stack here with Trey Lance, Davis Mills, Brandon Cooks, and Nico Collins. And I might draft Brevin Jordan also to complete this Davis Mills stack. Guys, Davis Mills. Can I talk about Davis Mills for just 2 seconds? And he's probably not going to get drafted in a single one of your fantasy leagues, so you probably don't care very much. But I'm doing an 18-round best ball draft, and he is going to get drafted in these drafts. And you look at some of the analytics for Davis Mills last season, and Davis Mills, his deep ball completion percentage was 4th best in the NFL. No, there's only 3 quarterbacks with a more accurate deep ball last season than Davis Mills. Granted, it wasn't the biggest sample size. He only threw 394 pass attempts. Not that many of them went deep, but when he was throwing deep, they were accurate. That's great news for Brandon Cooks. Great news for Nico Collins. And all the reports out of Houston is that he's actually really taken a step forward early in training camp compared to his rookie season. I'm excited for Davis Mills, man. I think he's going to be a clear starter the entire season. I think he could easily grow into a pretty average, like at least average quarterback in the NFL, which I think is very exciting for the Texans, a team that's also just going to lose so many games this season. Brevin Jordan gets snagged 1 pick ahead of me. I will go Austin Hooper probably with this next pick, unless there's a receiver that I think makes sense. Trey Lance, Davis Mills, not much else to work with in terms of stacking here. I'm done drafting Will Fuller. I mean, paging Will Fuller. There's been nothing, literally nothing. 16 days ago, Fuller is bouncing back from a finger injury, is being monitored by multiple teams. I've never seen a finger injury take more than 8 months to recover from. What type of finger injury did Will Fuller have that he is still sidelined with a finger injury? There's just no way that's actually the scenario. NFL training camp's underway. Fuller's he could help so many teams, but it's definitely not a good sign he hasn't signed with the team yet. It's not a good sign he's basically been totally absent of the news. I was drafting him in sort of earlier best ball drafts, but at this point, not being on a team is not a good sign for you as a receiver or as a player in the NFL. Thoughts on McCaffrey? Yeah, I'm taking McCaffrey first overall. I'm taking him second overall. Taking him third overall. I got him 4th overall in my first high stakes league because people draft scared and they think he's going to get hurt. He does have a high risk of injury. Every running back has a high risk of injury. He also has a pretty high chance of winning your entire league because that's the type of upside Christian McCaffrey has. There's no player I would rather draft in fantasy this season than Christian McCaffrey. So yeah, I'm in on CMC. I don't think you should be scared of him. I get it. I get that he's absolutely tanked each of the last 2 seasons. I get that he has a high risk of injury. I get that you don't want to come in last place in your fantasy league. But at the same time, you gotta weigh the risks with the rewards. And I think the reward for CMC is you come in first in your league, or you have a very good chance to making the championship and coming in first. Would it be bad to have Najee and Deontay? Brendan, I probably wouldn't do that. I'd probably just go with Najee and avoid the Steelers receivers at that point. I don't think you want too risky or Kenny Pickett-led offense with also a probably bottom 10 offensive line. I don't think that's something you want. So Javonte as a fifth-round keeper is good. Yeah, Javonte as a fifth-round keeper is absolutely fantastic. He's going in the round 2 of almost every single draft. The latest I've seen him go is round 3, and he has Jonathan Taylor level upside. He's like sort of the end of the tier, like him and Leonard Fournette, sort of end of a tier at running back of guys that could be league-winning top 3 running backs in fantasy football. Javonte has that in his range of outcomes because he's so efficient and because Russ is going to make that offense so much better. But he needs to get a little bit more of the backfield than he had last season. It was a 50% workload for him last year. He really needs to bring that up to like 70%, 65% to really hit that Jonathan Taylor type ceiling that I think he has. Do you like Waddle? Yeah, I do like Waddle. I think I like Waddle like a little bit more at cost than I like Tyreek Hill at cost. Draft Kamara, 9th pick PPR. I wouldn't take him that early, but you could definitely justify it. Like I would personally take Najee Harris over him. I would personally take Dalvin Cook, Austin Eckler, Derrick Henry over him as well. I think I would take Joe Mixon over Alvin Kamara also, because there is this slight chance of a suspension that like is just enough to knock me off Alvin Kamara, because there's not going to be a worse 3 a.m. notification at some point this season when that video leaks. I don't think it's going to happen. I'm still drafting Kamara in the 2nd round, but I'm not taking him in the 1st round. No. I will take Tyquan Thornton with my last pick. One of my other favorite last round picks, though, in the 18th round has been Jonnu Smith, too. I do already have 3 tight ends, though. Tyquan Thornton scored in his first preseason game. He's been scoring in practice. He is one of the fastest players in the NFL. Tyquan Thornton was the fastest player in this draft class. He had a 100th percentile 40-yard dash. Just for comparison, Deshaun Jackson ran the 40-yard dash in like 4.35 seconds. Tyquan Thornton ran it in under 4.3. He is faster than Deshaun Jackson in straight line speed. That's how fast Tyquan Thornton is. For some of you younger people, you might not even realize how fast Deshaun Jackson is, so maybe that wasn't the best example. But I think even like John Ross, who I think might have the record for the 40 time, like barely ran it faster than Tyquan Thornton. And John Ross might not be the best comp to be comped to. But yeah, Tyquan Thornton was 0.06 seconds slower than John Ross, who was the fastest 40 time, I think, of all time. So that's how fast Tyquan Thornton is. And he's been showing up already in training camp. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Time is the most valuable thing we have. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. I really do appreciate it. The number one way you could possibly support me is checking out the WalterPicks app, tossing us a 5-star review in the App Store. We're number 15 in sports apps right now, which is absolutely so exciting and just really crazy. Really exciting times. I'll be back live, if not later this week, definitely early next week. Have a great rest of your night, and thank you so much.